Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the November 14th, 2023 regular Board of Education meeting. Call to order of the meeting is with us this evening is Mrs. Vitale, Mrs. Guernsey, myself, Mrs. Jacobson, Mr. Asa, Mrs. Maxon-Canelli, and Mr. Peterson, along with our superintendent, Mr. Testani. If you could all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. And Mrs. Vitale, could you start us off? Okay, welcome to our students with us this evening. You guys feel far today. How are you? Hey! I don't know why. So you guys are up. Go ahead. I don't know who's going first today.
Hi, my name is Louis. I'm the junior representative. Last week we had the Romeo and Juliet play, so it was a modern take on Romeo and Juliet set in the 70s during the Vietnam War. We had Luke Silence as Romeo. Oh, am I too loud? Oh. And Audrey Compare as Juliet, sorry. And some original composition music by Mel Drizzen. Oh, I thought we were switching after every time. We also had, we're having Alumni Day the day before Thanksgiving, so that's in about 10 days. All the students will come back, say hi to their teachers. Well, we're also having the homecoming dance on the 17th. I think Agatha will be attending. That's it.
I look a little rough because I was actually out dress shopping, and it's almost like a battlefield. It really is, you know. It was like Black Friday back in the day, you know. It was like tugging and a lot of hair pulling. So we have the Halloween parade. It was very exciting. Everyone went all out. The students this year got really into it. I think we were starved of like school spirit because of COVID. So now that we're seniors, everyone is really getting into it. You know, career day, everything's coming up. So that's always super exciting. I thought about being a Lululemon mom, but I will be a dentist. Veterans Day concert. Sorry. We will have a concert in honor of the veterans. And the really exciting part is the bands play the theme song of every single one of the branches. And then the veterans in the audience get to stand up as their song is being played. It's a really wonderful time, you know, to honor them, to honor their sacrifice and all the work they put in so we can have the freedom and we can stand here and have a board. We'll also set up 100 flags in honors of the veterans around the student parking lot. Monday, all the students will be participating and have an SEL survey, an aperture survey, and we'll get feedback on our social and emotional skills. Generally, it was questions like, how long has it been since you were grateful? You know, and then at the end, you got your top ones, you know, self-control, gratefulness, stuff like that. It was really helpful because then you really know where you are, and what skills you need to work on to be better, you know? We have county and country. I don't think I'm saying that correctly, but it's the ball for the seniors and the juniors, which is always super exciting. It's fun to see everybody dress up, and especially as a senior, you're kind of looking for, you know, opportunities, especially since the applications are over. You want to get dressed, you want to do stuff with your friends. That's always a nice opportunity. We have Decades Day and Career Day coming up, and I think the faculty is particularly excited about Decades Day because the students get really into it, and it's always awesome. Thank you. Have a nice evening.
Good evening. I hope all of you guys are doing well. What's been going on at Ward? There's been a lot of things that's been happening. We just recently completed our fall concert, which included the band, chorus, orchestra, and we are so proud of all of our music departments and their outstanding performances.
Good evening. So on last Wednesday, November 8th, we had our national letter of intent signing day. So a lot of the student athletes got to be honored and signed to their schools, so they get to continue their athletic career at their dream schools. It's a great experience. They get to take pictures with their families, coaches, athletic directors, and make memories.
Tomorrow we have a very exciting day for the junior and seniors. We have our class of 2024 and class of 2025 Powder Puff football game. This is going to be a fundraiser for both classes. It will be held on the turf fields, and I'm very excited to see us seniors beat the juniors. So that will be really, really exciting.
No way. But so the FWHS Counseling Department is sponsoring Alumni Day of Return. That will be on Wednesday, November 22nd. It's a great opportunity for juniors and seniors to meet past FWHS graduates, the past Mustangs, get to revisit their school, and they get to learn more about life after high school.
So I always mention DECA in these meetings, but we just had an amazing breakthrough. We got to go to the Chamber of Commerce and we got to speak to local business owners, and it was an amazing experience. We got to learn more about how to maintain a leadership position, what life is going to be in an actual business setting, in an actual business world. And I'm so honored that we got that experience. I would like to say thank you to our teachers that made that happen, and thank you to the Chamber of Commerce as well.
Okay, the Ward Drama Club is holding their rendition of the Our Town play. It's starting this Friday, November 17th, Saturday, November 18th, and that will be at 8 p.m. in the Ward Black Box. And they will also have another showing on Sunday, November 19th at 2 p.m.
Fairfield Ward just keeps getting better and better. We would love to say thank you to Mr. Papajors and Mr. Testani for our new mosaic and our ward signs. I just learned today that it's LED and it lights up at night, which is awesome. And I can't wait to see the more changes that ward gets and how it develops into a better school.
Starting next week, Monday, during all lunch waves, we have bracelets for sale. They read "Let's Go Mustangs," and they have the Ward, not the Ward logo, but a newer Ward logo on the other side. And if I may approach, we will begin passing those out because we have some for the board members and Superintendent Testani.
Along with these awesome bands, I brought along the Fairfield Entrepreneurship Company sweatshirts that the class of 2024 designed. These are order forms. If any of you guys are interested, a portion of the proceeds go to suicide awareness, and anything counts. The sweatshirts are really cute too. So if you might not like them, but maybe your kids will, it's a cute sweatshirt. That's all. Thank you so much.
Hello, I'm Samantha Mariquin.
I'm Maddie Beggs.
Okay, so currently the students at Walter Fitz will be learning about how to winterize and care and feed our bees throughout November, December, January, and February. We are scheduled to get at least one new hive in February, and currently we have one hive and it is currently thriving, which I got to see them today. It was fun. Our hives have been treated for mites and fed a steady dose of sugar water, and new honeycomb has formed, and brood has been laid inside of their honeycomb. And this month, the students will design soap using honey from our bees and create lip balm from honeycomb and beeswax. Our forensic science class will be starting up our podcast next week, and our first guest for this year is a retired FBI agent. And our podcast is featured on Spotify, so if you want to go check it out when it comes out, go ahead. Our forensics class is focusing marking period on techniques for collecting evidence at crime scenes and cold cases. And students in the Dangerous Planet Science course created stop motion movies using an app for stop motion movie making. And Regina Reiger, sorry if I butchered it, from Fairfield Ludlow High School was gracious enough to let our school borrow her equipment, and the IT department helped with purchasing the app and using Apple products, and we are using Apple products to record the videos. And one student created a stop motion movie of a tour of our school, and the student used Legos, clay, and other art supplies to create stop motion movies of stories about extreme weather like hurricanes, tornadoes, droughts, wildfires, and etc. And our students are working with students on a grant writing for a number of project-based learning, multidisciplinary projects, and students are working on grants for the edible plant garden, our native plants garden, outdoor garden, and new technology for coding, gaming, and creating apps and design. And this week we will begin construction on our flower beds with consultation from a structural engineer. And students will measure, cut, and fabricate their own garden beds to hold additional pollinator and edible plants. And next week, students will write a grant to work with the Connecticut Sea Grant and the Fairfield Conservation Department on local water research.
Ron Rappis from Bridgeport Public Schools is working with the students and staff at Walter Fitz on a mentorship program with the Talented and Gifted program at Louise Marin School. Last year, our students designed and executed a mentoring program with the Geraldine Clater Magnet School. The students hope to expand on the lessons and guidance with the students this year. WFC students have been working with the Nutty Company to provide 250 holiday bags with food to go home with our students for people at the Center for Family Justice. On Tuesday, there will also be 250 turkeys being donated in collaboration with the Nutty Company. 2 years ago, our students started with 50 holiday bags, and now we're up to 250. On Wednesday, November 23rd, our students and staff will be providing a potluck Thanksgiving meal. Some former students and other staff from the district will be joining us. We are incorporating recipes for all of the cultures represented at Walter Fitz. We will form a restorative circle and offer what we give thanks to this year. Fill in the Blanks is a nonprofit organization out of Norwalk. It donates monthly food donation bags to our students, and we have up to 85 bags per month. The students and staff hosted school counselors from Ward and Ludlow to work on programs here at WFC. They made sure all the students had access to the Common App and Naviance. Cody Curley and Jennifer Johnson have already planned to return in December to review and follow up with our students. We are so excited to report that some of our students have applied for early admissions, like me and Sam. And Sam has even started getting her acceptance letters back. And even better news, we were offered some scholarships as well. The workplace has come to WFC to speak to students who are looking for a post-secondary free training programs. Students who are not applying for a four-year college will be set up with a training program prior to graduation. And we are pleased to announce that our enrollment continues to grow, with students from the larger high schools more frequently asking to attend WFC. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow, great reports tonight. Anybody have any question? No? You guys, great work, amazing. Thank you so much for being here and oh, sorry, Mr. Issa.
So, quick question on the sweatshirts. Obviously, these order forms are for students and says homeroom, address, and payment. How would you like to handle if a board member would like to order one?
If you guys would like to order one, if you could maybe send a check out to Fairfield Ward and drop it in the front box. If not, we do accept cash. I could pick it up at the next board meeting, which we couldn't set up a Venmo because our teacher couldn't set up a separate bank account. But
All right, we'll follow up.
yeah.
Thank you. And for the Walter Fitzgerald students, the soaps and everything that you're making, what do you plan on doing with that? Sounds like a good Christmas present. So are you going to be selling them?
We're
Yeah,
gonna,
I mean, last year I think we got some. I'm
yeah,
just
we're gonna
saying.
be bringing soap to every board member and Mr. Testani. So yeah.
Okay, but not for purchase. Okay, thank you.
All right, well, thanks for being here tonight, everybody. More than welcome to stay or go on with your evening, and we look forward to hearing from you next month. Have a great rest of your month and a happy Thanksgiving as well to you and your families. All right. right, moving on, public comment. If anyone would like to give a public comment, you can come forward at this time. Okay. Then we will move on to our first presentation, first quarter financial report. Ms. Laborious.
Hello, thank you so much. Courtney LeBois, Chief Financial Officer, Fairfield Public Schools. Attached in your packets, you'll find the first quarter financials report. And it's early in the year, so overall, you'll find that we're projecting flat, so no need, no surplus, basically overall in the budget. In personnel services, I'll just highlight some big broad points because it is the first quarter. So up in the personnel category, you'll see, I think it's page 4, stamped in your packet. So that's the detail, sort of small print statement of account. You'll see that there's a negative 633 in the overall staffing and staff replacement account, but the bottom line is a negative 117, and it's made up in other categories. Again, that's a preliminary estimate. We look at the current year-to-date expenditures and the current year-to-date encumbrances, which if you look at the personnel line 1, the encumbrances are 108,145,000. That's all current active staff that were on board as of 9/13 actively being paid. The additional projected amount reflects people that are coming back from leaves of absences that wouldn't be encumbered, so they're on unpaid leaves, and also anticipated filling of vacancies. And so we'll continue to monitor that and report on it as Q2 comes and we have more people on payroll. Overall, the substitute account is flat. That typically, as we see attrition or vacancies on the teacher side, so absences or long-term absences, we transfer money to the sub account. Every year, it averages anywhere from 600K up to 1.1 million. So we fund the subs at a low level and then transfer funds out from the personnel as if teachers are absent. So net, right now, the total projected need in personnel would be 117,000 based on a really early trend with only 2 payrolls to show. Around fixed charges, we're seeing a positive balance in the health insurance account. If you'll recall, we did reduce the health insurance account last year as we had a more favorable rate. And as we talk to you about the budget this year, you'll see that I'll talk about it in the next section when we talk about the budget, but we think that the rates will be relatively favorable this year in the budget as well. And you're seeing a positive balance because we make an assumption based on a point in time when we build the budget for the number of active employees. We assume a number of vacancies that we'll fill, and we assume a fill rate at the rate they're currently taking up the insurance. So family, single plus one, and single. We're currently seeing more singles than we had anticipated. So we'll continue to monitor that because people are able to change as they're onboarded or during open enrollment. Pupil personnel. So, we've been doing well in pupil personnel in the sense that we had right-sized the expenses. This year, we did have a state mandate that extended the age of the youth that are in care with us throughout the rest of the year. They turned 22, so that's having a fiscal impact that we're showing here. My staff, myself, are working directly with Mr. Mancusi to watch and monitor that. We have a little bit of a new procedure in place this year. So, for example, rather than encumbering a full purchase order for all support services, which include occupational therapy, physical therapy, et cetera, we're doing it incrementally. So we project through January and then make adjustments to the purchase orders as needed. So this will likely come down. It's a really conservative assessment, and we're hopeful that we'll be able to absorb that increased impact on the mandate. Transportation, you see that we're flat. We did reduce the transportation this year budget with the anticipation that we would not be able to fully staff with drivers, but I'm happy to say that for 1 year, we've been making it work with the drivers we have by extended the runs. I'm seeing a lot of feedback come up, but from a fiscal perspective, we're spending the full budget, at least according to now. We'll see a favorable balance there because we get credits issued as we go if they're not, unfortunately, running buses. Right now, this projection is assuming we're running at budgeted levels. And the gas has been adjusted to reflect the locked-in rate that we really get through the town. So net, that's about negative 240 that we're showing in pupil personnel. We'll continue to monitor. School expense, we always show that fully spending out. The schools need their money, they spend it. And in the support expenses, likewise, we're similarly showing full spending there. The majority of outstanding balance is in the instructional services, materials, and supplies. That's because we have that large purchase from the right to work legislation that we've contracted and we expect to pay out shortly or throughout the year, according to schedule, I should say. Maintenance, operations, and transportation. We've had some big projects come up. Angeles has managed by transferring funds to appropriate needs, and that's reflected here. Utilities, we're keeping those flat right now because, like I said, we're locked in for some of the rates. Some of the rates were on the market, depending on electric or gas. Right now, it's unpredictable. If we have a warm winter again, we'll have some favorable balances there. If we don't, we'll have to plan for it. So capital outlay, we're assuming full spending, all the things we need. We do hold some of that until a bit later in the year to make sure that we have those favorable balances in, for example, the utilities accounts and transportation. So I'll pause there and see if there are any questions through the chair.
Mr. Asa.
Currently, are we having any positions frozen or are we allowing hiring for all positions?
So to my knowledge, we're freezing the positions at the early in the year. So to my knowledge, we don't want to add any freezes.
No, not currently. We're just looking at, as needs arise for paraprofessionals, we're working through Rob's office to make sure that we assign them appropriately.
Mr. Peterson.
Just to confirm, it sounds like it's still the case that we're still short 5 bus drivers. Is that the deficit there?
Okay,
I mean, in terms of who's on the payroll.
Yes, we are short bus drivers. As some are onboarded, we are also losing some. But again, they're, as Courtney mentioned, they are making it work through longer runs, which is not ideal. But again, it's just a challenge that we continue to face. And I think, and I'm hoping it's not the case, but again, First Student is a provider next door at a neighboring district this year as a first time. But I understand that they're also having some challenges there as well. So I just think it's overall.
And I was just going to ask as a follow-up, I think I remember at this time last year, there was something like 5 people who were in training and we thought were going to be coming on. Do we have any visibility into, I mean, it sounds like too with the Westport issue, we have no idea.
Well, we're supposed to have a bench for us, if you will, that's cycling out, and I think the bench is not there as we'd expected. But unfortunately, that's the case. But fortunately, from a fiscal perspective, we'll see some savings because we do get the credits for that. That's not what you want to hear right now.
We've asked for a meeting with management. We have not gotten a response yet, and we're hoping for right after the holidays at the latest to be able to sit down with them and ask some questions and get some answers.
Oh, Mrs. Maxon Kelly.
Just one very quick follow-up on that, and just so that the board is informed of this, at this point with those longer bus runs, which schools are facing the longest bus runs and of what duration?
I couldn't answer that. I don't know if there are in particularly any specific schools impacted. I think the way they've tiered it, they're able to cover. I don't think anything is any longer than it was last year. But that's why I'd like to get a little more information, because when I get the information through Angeles, I'd like a little bit more detail on how they're able to cover this, because I'm not an expert in the transportation and how they're able to do this by extending. I think what they're doing is extending the time the drivers actually are on the road or on shift, not necessarily on the road. So that's why I have some questions and we're hoping to get some clarity from them. So what's not causing us to have the larger surplus is we're paying drivers longer. So I don't think they're sent home to come back. They're able to jump from one run to the next. It's
Yeah.
a little bit more complicated, but I'd like to hear it from them, maybe get a graphic or some sort of summary that we can share with the board, either in facilities or as just in a general board meeting. But again, we haven't gotten a response yet.
If I could just add broadly, we have two and three, 6.5 hour, 5 hour, like the hourly buses. That's exactly right. You want the more detail, but it's we in the budget. We budget for the tiered buses, the number of the hours and the size of bus. So we run less of the low hour buses and more of the greater hour buses. Essentially, and it's a big puzzle, like Nick said, because you've got so many schools and routes and moving parts. They also were able to increase a contract for special ed buses, that out of district buses that for student had been running, that we're now contracting with a different contractor, by freeing up some more additional for student buses to do the ones that we need to do. So.
Okay, anyone else? All right. Okay. We will be going to Board of Finance, just so the board knows, next week on the 21st for the quarterly review as well. Thank you. All right. Next up, Student Achievement Data Review, District Leadership.
Just want to say that a lot of time and effort went in. I think that you'll be impressed by some of the bright spots that have occurred through the assessment data that was collected. There are opportunities for growth, but overall, I believe the presentation will be enlightening and also show how the district is rebounding well from the COVID pandemic.
Good evening to James Avajancic, Chief Academic Officer. Good evening to the members of the Board of Ed and the public. This evening, the Instructional Department will present to you its annual State Assessment Performance Review. Alongside me is the instructional team, who will introduce themselves and their section as it comes up this evening. Before we begin, I'd also like to recognize Ms. Wood, who's in the audience tonight, our District Assessment and Data Coordinator. Ms. Wood collected, sifted, analyzed, and produced much of the presentation that is before you this evening. Although these data that are before you tonight are high-level and high-stakes assessments, Ms. Wood has equally explored and examined internal informative data with our school administrators, teachers, and school-based teams to effect change in the day-to-day instruction, which meaningfully impacts our teachers and students. In the spring of each year, our students in grades 3 through 8 and 11 are administered statewide assessments in language arts and mathematics. Students in 5, 8, and 11 are also administered a statewide science assessment. Each of these assessments are computer administered and adaptive. Students are assessed on grade level skills and content. Results are reported shortly after students take the assessment in the spring and summer, and generally released to the public by the State Department of Ed in late August, of which we then report to you. This evening, we will review results from the Smarter Balanced Language and Mathematics assessments, the Next Generation Science Standard Assessment, and the PSAT, SAT High School Evidence-Based Reading and Writing and Mathematics assessments. The data will further be disaggregated from the district level to the school level and finally the grade level, in order to establish and expose our strengths and our challenges. Before I begin, I offer one caution. A single assessment and data point at one point in time rarely communicates the entire narrative regarding student performance, nor does it capture the full and robust programming of Fairfield Public Schools in which students engage in daily. Nonetheless, these assessments and the results and the data do provide us with valuable information. They equip us with information about our curriculum implementation and alignment with grade level standards, and as a result, how our student performance aligns against those criteria. They grant us a year-to-year comparison of grade levels, schools, and groups of students and how they performed against those standards. Moreover, it provides us with a portrait of how our students grow and perform over time spent with us in the Fairfield Public Schools. There are bright spots across the district we're celebrating that could be capitalized upon, and there are areas of persistent challenge that continue to require our resources, attention, and planning. With that said, I will begin with a district overview of achievement from the spring 2023 administration of the Smarter Balanced Assessment, NGSS, or the Science Assessment, and the SAT. Data in this section are, and throughout the presentation, are reported by proficiency level, which is defined as a score of a 3 or a 4 out of 4 points on the state summative assessments. In addition, the high school SAT requires students achieve a 480 in evidence-based reading and writing and a 530 in math on the SAT. Overall, you'll see that district performance is fairly consistent in language arts and science. You may notice also, as I point out, that math performance in grades 3 through 8 has improved by 5 percentage points over that same 3-year period. In comparison, the state has observed similar results in each area with consistent performance that continues to lag behind the pre-pandemic levels. In high school, SAT proficiency performance also remains consistent with 77% of students achieving proficiency, again, in evidence-based reading and writing, and 61% in mathematics. At this time, I will turn the presentation over to Ms. Goss, who will review achievement by school.
Thank you, Janine Goss, Executive Director, Pre-K-12 Literacy. So I'm going to share some highlights of achievement by school as measured by Smarter Balanced in math and ELA, as well as on the SAT. You're going to see information about NGSS in the next set of slides, not this slide. So in ELA on SBA, Osborne Hill increased their proficiency by almost 15%. That is significant. And also kudos to McKinley and Tomlinson for a 5% increase in their overall proficiency scores as well. When we look at math, and I'll come back to middle school. When we look at math achievement on SBA, McKinley also increased by 6%, while North Stratfield increased by 5%. I would say Sherman should be extremely proud as well. They reached almost 91% proficiency in math in grades 3 through 5 overall. And let's go back to middle school. In terms of, let's see, in middle school, lost my notes, sorry about that. All 3 schools either maintained proficiency or they have increased slightly. When we look at the evidence-based reading and writing portion on the SAT, overall district-wide results have remained fairly consistent over the past 3 years, going from 79% in 2021 to 81% to 78% most recently. The same is true in terms of proficiency in the area of math. So as Mr. Testani said, we are excited about the opportunities that we have to increase student achievement. And we're going to hear more about subgroup data as we further unpack these later on in the presentation, because we do have opportunities to improve our ability to reach diverse learners. So as we continue to unpack this, some students may need to be supported in different ways.
Good evening, Nicole Danishevsky, Executive Director of Mathematics and STEM. On the next few slides, I will be discussing our district achievement by grade on the Smarter Balanced Assessment, NGSS, MPS, SAT, and SAT data. The percentage of students in grades 3 through 5 meeting or exceeding benchmark remained consistent. The average proficiency scores across all schools on the ELA portion of the Smarter Balanced Assessment was between 74 and 76% over the past 3 years. The average proficiency across all middle schools on the ELA portion of the SBA was between 69 and 71% over the past 3 years. There was an increase in the percentage of students meeting or exceeding benchmark in both 7th and 8th grade. This slide shows that the overall achievement on PSAT and SAT in ELA for grades 9 through 11 was 79% in 2023. Grade 9 and 10 PSAT, evidence-based reading and writing achievement, has declined over the past 3 years by 7% in grade 9 from 2021 to 2023 and 3% in the 10th grade. Achievement has remained fairly consistent on the PSAT and SAT, evidence-based reading and writing, in grades 11 and 12 over the past 3 years. Switching to mathematics, students in grades 3 and 5 had an increase in the percentage of students meeting or exceeding benchmark on the 2023 SBA. The student performance in all 3 grades has exceeded the state average for proficiency. It's also important to note 74% of all students in grades 3 through 5 achieve proficiency on the Math SBA assessment, which is significantly higher than the state average of 47%. In grade 7, students demonstrated an 8% increase in the percentage of students meeting or exceeding benchmark. Student performance in grades 6 through 8 has exceeded the state average for proficiency. 61% of all students across grades 6 through 8 have achieved proficiency on the assessment, compared to a state average of 39%. Moving on to the high school level for PSAT and SAT data. Student proficiency on the grade 9 PSAT math has shown a slight decrease over the past 3 years. There was a 6% increase in grade 10, however, from 2022 to 2023. The performance on grade 11 PSAT and SAT math has remained consistent throughout the past 3 years. This slide will show us the NGSS student achievement proficiency rates in grades 5, 8, and 11. They have increased in 5% in grade 11 over the past 3 years. Student performance has remained consistent in grade 5, while there's been a slight decrease in 8th grade proficiency rates. It's also important to note that student performance in all 3 grades has exceeded the state average for proficiency. Now I will turn the presentation over to Julie, who's going to share some analysis of our subgroup data.
Hi, everyone. I'm Julie Heller, the Program Director for 612 ELA. Click some slides. Want to click for me, maybe? So I'm going to talk a little bit about the various subgroups in the Fairfield Public Schools and their performance on these standardized assessments. So slides 23 through 29 provide a brief analysis of the overall performance on standardized tests of students who are considered high needs, as well as students who fall into various race and ethnicity categories. Though high-need students in Fairfield Public Schools at the elementary and middle levels are achieving higher than the state average, the data is flat in ELA and shows modest gains in math and science. On the SAT, achievement has dropped by 6 percentage points in ELA, and increased by 5 percentage points in math. All ethnicity groups, with the exception of whites, have shown increases on the Smarter Balance assessment for both math and ELA. And regarding the SAT, most students who take the SAT math are white compared to the other ethnicity groups. In 2023, there were 324 more white students who took the SAT math test than all other ethnicity subgroups combined. I'm not sure. On the NGSS slide, overall, Asian and Black or African American students and those who are considered 2 or more races have increased in achievement on the NGSS assessment in 2023. The white and Hispanic or Latino student subgroups achievement level has remained fairly consistent. But overall, we need to continue to explore some strategies for closing the opportunity gaps for students and to persist on working to create greater access to the curriculum and support resources.
Good evening, Lisa Oliver, Director of Social Studies. We are going to take a look at the cohort growth analysis right now on Smarter Balanced Assessment, grades 4 through 8 in ELA and math. This slide illustrates ELA performance by cohort in grades 3 through 8. It shows the percentage change of students reaching levels 3 or 4, the meeting or exceeding levels on the ELA Smarter Balanced Assessment. You'll notice the grades 3 to 4 cohort in gray and the grades 7 to 8 cohort in blue showed a 3% increase from the 21-22 academic year to the 22-23 academic year. While the cohort shown in sage green showed an increase of 8% from grades 4 to 5, there was a decline in proficiency of 9% from grades 5 to 6. The grades 6 to 7 cohort in orange remained the same at 74% proficiency on the ELA SBA. Slide illustrates the math performance by cohort, again in grades 3 through 8. And while the cohort illustrated in sage green shows a 5% increase from grades 4 to 5, it shows a decline of 6% from grades 5 to 6 in proficiency on math SBA. You'll notice too that in grades 3 to 4, the cohort illustrated in gray, it increased slightly in proficiency from 21 to 22 that academic year, and then from 22 to 23.
The data on the following slides will show the average percent of growth that students at Fairfield Public Schools achieved towards their individual growth targets. Please note that students in grade 3 do not have any growth data since that is the first year of the assessment. Our growth data begins being calculated in 4th grade. Data highlights for the SBA ELA growth data are that Osborne Hill and Stratfield schools both showed increases. Osborne Hill's growth data increased by 11% and Stratfield's growth data grew by 5%. This slide shows the average percent of growth achieved in math. Burr, Riverfield, and Osborne Hill schools all showed increases in their growth data. Yet again, Osborne Hill is leading the way with a math growth of 11%. All elementary schools had an average growth achieved higher than the state average. Looking at our middle school data shows that Tomlinson had a 5% increase in their ELA percent of growth achieved. While the state and Fairfield Woods declined in their average percent of growth achieved in ELA in grades 6 through 8, Tomlinson increased and Roger Ledlow remained consistent. Looking at mathematics across the middle schools, throughout the 3 middle schools and the state, there was a decrease in the average percent of growth achieved from 2022 to 2023. The average percent of growth achieved in ELA as measured by the Smarter Balanced Assessment in grades 4 through 8 was 63% in 2023. The average percent of growth achieved increased in grade 4 in mathematics, while students in grades 5 through 8 had some slight decreases in the average percent of growth achieved from 2022 to 2023. Now, Justine is going to share analysis of our College Board, AP, and honors data with you.
Good evening. Justine LaSala, Program Director of Science and STEAM, K-12. We're going to look at some high school specific data at this point. We're going to start with our College Board Advanced Placement scores. This slide reflects changes in advanced placement participation in exams from 2021 to 2023. Significantly, the number of students who are completing AP exams has increased steadily from 695 in 2021 to 855 in 2023. In addition, the number of students earning at least a 3 on an AP exam has increased from 77% in 2021 to 83% in 2023. Looking at our high school enrollment in honors/AP courses versus non-honors or AP courses by subgroup, this slide provides us some information about the differences in the enrollments based on students' subgroup designation. As you can see, different subgroups participate in AP honors classes at different rates. The gap between high-need students and non-high-need students enrolled in AP and honors level courses continues with a disproportionate number of non-high-need students enrolling in honors and AP. There's a similar gap in participation for students identified for special education. I'm going to pass this on to Lisa Oliveira, who's going to talk about, I'm going to pass it to Zakiya Parrish, Dr. Parrish, to talk about our data around chronic absenteeism.
Good evening, Zakiya Parrish, Deputy Superintendent. Just a reminder, chronic absenteeism, it is missing 10% of the school days within a given school year. So that number does change as the school year goes on, but it's something that is closely monitored by our school-based teams as well as at the district level. So looking at our elementary schools, most of our schools had reductions in their chronic absenteeism over the course of last year. Want to highlight specifically McKinley with a 5.4% decrease in their chronic absenteeism from the 22 school year to the 23 school year, as well as Dwight, which decreased by 3.8%, Stratfield by 3.4%, and Sherman by 1.6%. Looking at our middle schools, again, reductions across our middle schools for the most part, highlighting both Roger Ludlow with a 1.3 reduction, as well, 1.3% that is, as well as Tomlinson with a 1.2% reduction. So they've been working across the schools to really re-engage students and their families and back into school since returning from the pandemic. Then looking at our high schools, again, reductions across, for the most part, highlighting Fairfield Ludlow, which had a 5.1% decrease in their chronic absenteeism. So looking at this on a district level, you can see that overall as a district, our chronic absenteeism in 2021 was 16.5%, and as of the close of school last year, that was reduced down to 10.8%. We saw significant reductions in the chronic absenteeism for our multilingual learners, as well as some of our students who qualify for special education services and our high needs populations. We also saw reductions across all of our racial and ethnic groups from 2021, 22 on into 2023.
Okay, as far as next steps, executive directors and program directors will continue to refine the curriculum implementation guides for core academic areas to identify strengths, areas for revision, cross-disciplinary alignment opportunities, and expanding culturally responsive resources. Teachers will continue to collaborate on the implementation of curriculum within and across schools in their course level teams. As far as instruction is concerned, collectively, we will advance the ongoing identification and implementation of high-quality instruction strategies in department and building-based meetings. We will also continue to advance high expectations for all students by asking high-level questions, increasing academic conversation, building academic vocabulary, and increasing the use of common content area literacy strategies.
As far as the next steps around assessment for the instructional division, departments will continue to advance the development and use of common assessments and rubrics across all teachers of the same course or grade level. Across the district, teachers and leaders are doing deep data dives with our district data coordinator, Patty Wood, thank you for the presentation, to better understand student results and plan accordingly. Instructional assessment blocks, or interim assessment blocks, IABs, from the Connecticut State Department of Education are being integrated into curriculum units in grades 3 to 8 to progress monitor student learning of identified content standards. Around our next steps around professional learning include coaches and leaders are engaging in a number of professional learning experiences around pressing topics such as structured literacy, high quality instructional strategies, and ways of making students' thinking visible. Teachers are engaging in a number of professional learning experiences around our topics, such as artificial intelligence, structured literacy, as well as discipline-specific focus areas such as the culture and history of Native Americans and social studies, and building thinking classrooms in mathematics. All teachers and leaders are immersed in learning experiences focused on the design and implementation of high-quality instructional strategies. And finally, teachers are learning to use the results of our universal screeners such as Acadians, NWEA, and the Connecticut SDE's interim assessment blocks for individual student progress monitoring and to plan for instruction.
Finally, our school teams, as I mentioned before, have been hard at work in terms of re-engaging students and families into the various school communities. They meet regularly to discuss student cases regarding those that have some absenteeism concerns and ways in which they can support families and students as they return back to school. During these attendance team meetings, they provide updates on the status of the action plans they put into place to support students and families and identify and connect families with community resources. This year, we have revised our beloved chronic absenteeism letter. The new letter, which was just sent out a few weeks ago, includes actual attendance data within the letter. So parents are able to see their child's absenteeism in comparison to their peers at that grade level in that school, as well as the whole school attendance rate. So they get an idea of how their child's attendance stacks up against those of their peers in the whole school community. We also provided both parents and our staff with an attendance handbook. We, with the assistance and talents of Rachel Chapa, our Director of Communications, she developed this graphic summary of the attendance policy that really nicely summarizes what the policy entails, what the rules are in terms of absences, so that it's easy for parents and staff to really understand the policies that we are adhering to. And the handbook, the staff version of that handbook also provides teams with agendas that they can use during those attendance meetings, some interventions, as well as some lists of resources that they could recommend for students and families. And then finally, at the state level, the State Department of Education and CERC also provides Talk Tuesdays, which is a regular webinar series around sharing best practices on reducing chronic absenteeism around the state. Those webinars are recorded, so those that can't participate while they're live and in action are able to access them at their leisure. And so they make a point of highlighting districts and schools that have showed improved performance with regards to student attendance and sharing those strategies that those school teams have used. So now we'll open it up to any questions that you all may have for us.
Mr. Peterson.
Hi, thank you for this presentation. It's thorough and interesting as always. I could have dozens of questions about individual bars, but I may skip those now and submit them later. But one small question on methodology and a somewhat larger question on the cohort analysis. And forgive me if I've asked this in previous years. I'm just curious whether that represents children who have been there those 3 years, and or whether it sorts out kids who have moved in, moved out of district.
So the ones on slide 31 on are rough cohorts there.
Yes.
So it's just comparing 1 year to the next.
Just the grades as they exist when they were tested.
You got it. Yeah.
Not sorted out for. Okay.
We did not remove any students who might not have had a data point the year prior.
But my only thought about that is that 3 years of consistent education under the Fairfield banner versus somebody who may come in or drop out. But that may be a level of I don't know whether we need that or not. It's just whenever I look at these, it occurs to me. On the chronic absenteeism issue, this may actually be a question more for Superintendent Testani. As I understand, the family outreach position is currently vacant, correct?
No, it has been filled.
Oh, it has been filled?
Yes.
I guess I didn't know if that was sort of the next steps. I didn't see it on here. Are we thinking about we're going to continue that program next budget cycle?
Right now, the plan is to continue it and maybe even expand upon it. Just we haven't had that level of discussion yet.
Oh, okay. I'll save the question then for budget season. I just not seeing it here and thinking that it was vacant. This caught my eye. But
no.
All right. I'll let it go for now. Thanks.
Mrs. Guernsey.
Thank you. Just another question, and thank you for this presentation. Fascinating. A question around, page 44 around chronic absenteeism. I'm so delighted to see us on this downward trend, and I'm just wondering, not that you know this, but I know that with the relaxation of the COVID policies and allowing kids to come back to school, I'm hoping that helps this continue on the downward trend. But just looking at McKinley and their higher numbers, and you were talking, Dr. Parrish was speaking about the letter that was updated, which I'm so happy to hear. Is that letter something that's sent to them in different languages, or just because that's a school obviously that has that need?
So I don't know all the languages that letter is sent home in. We do send it out as a hard copy. So there are times when the school will translate it to the main language of that school. So for McKinley, the highest number of students that speak a language other than English is Spanish. But we do have a large percentage of students at that school that also speak other languages as well. So it isn't translated into all of the languages that students speak at this time.
But the family coordinator is connecting with each one of those families then, or not necessarily?
So it's a school counselor. So when we backfilled the position, we put a school counselor there just because they have the experience and the knowledge that we found was missing in supporting both the McKinley and the Tomlinson population. So yes, the person in that position does target specifically those students and families that have a higher rate of absenteeism.
Thank you so much. Just one other question on page 42 about the enrollment by subgroup. And I know this is a report based on data that's collected for the state, but I'm wondering, is someone in our district looking at these data points by gender? Is this data that you collect? I'm just personally interested, and I'm not asking for anyone to provide me with that, but I just wondered if that was something that was being tracked by our group.
We haven't tracked the gender as a specific subgroup at this time. It is something that we could easily include in here as well and begin tracking, but we haven't thus far.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mrs. Kelly.
Hi, thank you for this. Sorry, I'm losing my voice a little. On slide 41, I just want to make sure I'm interpreting some of the numbers correctly for my own sake. So the 82.8% of students with the 3+, I'm trying to understand, does that mean that 82% of students that take AP exams get over a 3? Is that what we're saying? Because that seems high and good, but I just if you could clarify that. I'm not sure I understand the numerator and the denominator.
So that would be the number of exams with the 3 divided by the total number of exams. So the answer to your question is no, it's not necessarily 82% of students, because students could take maybe 3 exams and get 2 3s and a 1. The 2 exams would be counted on there.
Right, so I was trying, and I still don't think this gets me to where I'm trying to get to, but if I just take the 708 students who got a 3 or higher and divide that by the number of exams, that's only 40%. Do you think that would be more representative? I'm just trying to get a grasp of how many kids take a test. I don't care if they took 2 or 5 or 7, how many of them actually passed the test? And I don't know if that number is here.
No, we could get that. So I think what you're asking, just to clarify, is you want to know, regardless of how many exams a student took, how many got at least 1 3?
I was curious to know what our success rate is. If I took 3 different tests, but I only got a 3 on one of them, that would be I have a 33% hit rate there. Does that make sense? Right? If I got a 3 on all of them, that's 100%. If I got 3 on 2 of them, 66%. Like, that's the kind of number. I was just trying to see in general, like, do more kids get a 3 or less? And I feel like that's not jumping out at me. If I just want to know, like, are we torturing these children and they're all taking these exams and they're not getting a 3? Like, I don't know. And I don't get that number.
So you're asking, I think, 2 questions. Of the total number of exams, how many 3s? And then how many students, because you may be batting 33%, but you are a student who got a 3.
Right. I think I'm just looking for total number of tests taken, total number of 3s or 4s or 5s.
Okay, yeah, you can get that for you.
Yeah, that's all. And it's pure curiosity.
Good
Mrs.
question.
Vitale.
Just to follow up on that, we used to get a report by class even, just what the scores were per AP class.
It was
In the Friday pack.
Sorry, busy week.
You might have been busy.
Busy week. I will look, that will be helpful to look at. Thank you. And just follow up on Ms. Guernsey's question about the letter for chronic absenteeism. I'm happy to see the downward trend at McKinley, but still comparing that school to other schools in the district, there is still an area of concern. So for the letter, does it include just the district average, just in terms of chronic absenteeism for those parents? Just so they, being their peer group, is not just that school, it is just every student in the district.
So it's a standard letter. We aren't able to change it for one specific school, but it doesn't include district-wide data. That part is not included. It is just the school level data in the letter.
Okay, and the counselor, is the counselor at McKinley or is the counselor at Tomlinson that's addressing the split between the two?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Maxon Kennelly.
Okay, a lot of questions. So what I don't have is in any particular order. So first question is that does anything in this presentation, do you see it driving a budget focus? beyond what we would expect with, I'll say, normal PD or anything else, is there anything in here that has really then percolated to the top of we need to put money behind X because we need to move X?
I don't think we've really gotten into that level of detail yet as we've put this presentation together. So it'd be hard to say yes or no. If it would be, it wouldn't be a major increase to the budget, but it would be looking at a little bit more closely, I think, over the coming weeks as to really delving deeper into the numbers, because as you put it together, things are glaring, but we really haven't had an opportunity to sit and talk. And it's part of a larger discussion that we'll be having in the coming weeks around district improvement plan, revising, revisions to that, and how they all can intertwine and work collectively together.
So then to follow up to that, with scores arriving in August, is that if this is process of digging into these numbers is only beginning, is there nothing in here that's driving any of the SIPs?
No, the SIPs, but we've also reached out to every one of the principals, and we're trying to be a little bit more creative in some improvement cycles. So they're identifying, we're meeting with them and finishing up Monday actually with 90-day plans on things they want to address specifically in their schools with their teams. Kind of SIPs within the SIP to try to make, well, they're more individualized, smaller, giving them the opportunity to be more creative, assigning more specific detail to roles and responsibilities of who's going to drive that improvement with 30-day check-ins.
Okay, thank you. Now, a couple of other questions. First of all, I don't know if you can remind me, when did we approve the math curriculum for elementary school and middle school? Again, I'm already forgetting dates.
So it would have been 2 years ago. High school, we did some last year, remember, but 2 years ago was the...
That's why I was confusing it. So I guess I'm wondering from this data, and obviously the one thing we don't see on this, and nor should we, is strand data. And because I don't know to what degree Smarter Balance, for example, comes with strand data, where we're identifying weaknesses, both in math and ELA. But since math has been so recently approved, and I'm not seeing data representing an upward trend, so how does that make us re-examine aspects of our curriculum? Or maybe it doesn't. Maybe something just takes longer. I don't know. But I was wondering if you could speak to that.
Sure. Great question. It's actually something that I've been working on with Patty with my MRTs and MSTs, looking at the target data that we get from Smarter Balanced Assessment, looking at what the strengths are. We're able to go back, I think it's about 3 years, and looking at specific target areas. And then we're also integrating the IABs this year into our curriculum. And we're doing data teams with the MRTs and MSTs, and then that's funneling down to the grade levels. And we're looking for specific strengths that we see, successes, as well as areas where we can put our efforts together and through professional development, through integrating the coaching PD, the high quality instruction to support that.
So with already 2 years worth of data, this is a third. Again, I'm not counting 2020. We haven't already identified those things? And now this is either further demonstration of areas of weakness that curriculum is or is not addressing, or is this showing some new insight or pointing to some new insights? Because I appreciate what you're saying, and it's beautifully vague, but I'm hoping that we're getting a better handle on weaknesses.
We're working on that. If you'd like, I can share some more detailed information with you around that. I don't have it with me tonight. But
no, and that's fine, nor do I need to know. That's not, it's more the concern of we have a very recently approved curriculum. I would have hoped it would have been addressing some of those areas, and where it's not, obviously I'm hoping the data is pointing to that. I'll just leave it at that. So
I just want to chime in a little bit. It's been 2 years. I think that we need to give it a little bit more time. I think having a new executive director who's put a lot of time and effort in mobilizing the staff and leveraging some key staff members to push the work forward is going to pay dividends. But I think to jump to conclusions that maybe that we need to revisit curriculum after only 2 years, I think.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to say, let's bring it up for a vote. I'm going to be very clear. I'm not saying that, but it's the fact that by grade, the scores have gone down and by cohort, and I find that extremely concerning. Something's not going well, point blank. And again, and I want to recognize there are lots of successes, so I'm sorry to focus on the negative. I should start with the praise. I'm better at the criticism, but it's concerning, and it would be remiss of me not to say that. Again, jumping around, here's one other point. At any point, do staff, and again, we don't need to see it now, and I'm not asking for it, but what about the comparison to 2019? We keep talking about learning loss, but where are we compared to where we were in terms of how is our curriculum serving us? How are our current staff serving us? What are they prepared to do? But what's our data look like compared to 2019?
I want to mention a little something about ELA. We went back years in terms of the targets on SBA, and we actually leveraged the fact that there were some areas that we have not been performing well in, and we elevated those standards in the new ELA curricula. So that's one of the things we did. We also had conversations from pre-K to K, 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 8 to 9, 5 to 6, and came up with those core instructional strategies that need to be present throughout in a vertically aligned way so that students were prepared for the next grade level. And so we did that when we had our colleagues in the same room at the same time this summer. So we also used the targets and claims for just that reason as well.
So I don't want to speak out of turn with the 2019 data without it in front of me, but it is a data point that I have readily accessible that I could get to you in terms of the comparison 4 years ago to today to talk about either loss or lack of loss.
Can I just jump on that real quick? The chronic absentee numbers would be helpful there too.
So we know that pre-pandemic, the chronic absenteeism numbers were much lower than what they are now, but we can get you the exact numbers of what they were, but they were lower across all subgroups than what they are, even with the decreases we've seen over the last few years.
Okay, a few other questions. I was hoping you could explain to me the whole part of the presentation on growth data. I'm not familiar with that very well. I'm not sure how to absorb that. All the rest of it I'm very comfortable with from past presentations, but not the growth data part of this.
So there are, as I mentioned in the beginning, 4 scores essentially students get on Smarter Balance, 1, 2, 3, or 4. The state further breaks that down, they cut them in half essentially. So there's 8 different lanes you could be in as a student, a low 1, a high 1, a low 2, a high 2, all the way up to 4. Within each of those, it takes the score in 3rd grade or 4th grade to 5th, whichever one we're at, and it places a student in one of those lanes. So it's a 1-to-1 comparison from year to year. It's not a rough cohort. It's matched from 3rd to 4th, 4th to 5th, etc. So you have to have 2 data points. So the vertical scale, just to give an example, say the student scored a 2300 in 3rd grade, and I'm making these numbers up now. I could get you the actual ones if you want to see them. That may be a low 3 score. So they earned a 3 on the Smarter Balance, but they're in the low 3 column. It assigns them a number that they have to achieve next year. So it might say they need 50 more points. They need a 2350 in order to achieve their growth as recommended by the state. So the numbers you see up there essentially are saying that students, and just to pick the first school there, Burr and the first line, 77%, students achieve 77% of the total available growth targets to them. Does not mean that 77% of students met their growth target. Sure. It means that of all the available points to them from 3rd to 4th, 4th to 5th, at that point, not fifth to sixth, that they achieve 77% of them. That's their average of the points achieved, not the number of students who met whatever that cutoff point is.
And so what does the district do with this data? This specific data? So it could mean that someone scored a high 3 and maintained a high 3. Therefore, they did not achieve the growth, but they're still doing in a manner that would be satisfactory to a parent.
There are two numbers that get reported. A binary number that says like, you either made it or you didn't. You might have gotten 40 out of 41 points. The state would say you didn't make it at that point because you needed 41. And then there's the scale that gets them where you can achieve up to 110% of the points. And 110 because many kids go beyond what the state recommends in that number up there today. So what do we do with it? The state accountability index, which just came out, which determines your final numbers and so forth, says that all students should achieve all their growth. So it's set at 100%, which it's a good number to set it at because it closes a gap. So the ones at the low 1 or low 2, those students have further to go in order to close the gap, and therefore their targets are higher. It might be 70 or 80 points, whereas a high 4 only needs to maintain their score as a high 4 within there. So that data tells us over several years, if you're meeting your growth target, you're going to close the gap and get to a proficiency score at some point.
Okay. All right. Thank you on that. Couple of other questions. Yeah, I'm moving right on from that one. Again, I'm sorry, this is in no particular order. Regarding the chronic absenteeism, which again was wonderful to see growth, to see improvement. However, I do note that 4 out of our 11 elementary schools have a worse percentage. Anything to which we attribute that besides some trips to Florida, but anything?
There may have been a few trips to Florida, but not very many. We did see an increase in families that were opting to take vacations because of the times where they couldn't take vacation previously. We also saw an increase in school avoidance, and that's across all levels, not just at the elementary level. And even though the rules for COVID, we're treating that just as we would any other respiratory infection, we still had students that were absent due to either that, the flu, RSV. So we did still see students absent due to illness. So I would say illness, vacations, and then the school avoidance.
And just to add, there has been a lot of increase nationwide with travel during the school year. Just simply because, in talking to colleagues and reading some reports, it's just cheaper to travel in the off-peak times than it is to travel on peak times, particularly now since the pandemic compared to prior to the pandemic. And it's been very well publicized on the news. So I'm going to venture to say people are going to do this more and more until you can see the price of travel during school vacations and such level off to pre-pandemic costs.
Okay. A couple of the questions, one that I sent in by email to you. I don't know if you had a chance to look at it, was regarding the AP scores. That's one of the questions that I had regarding AP scores was how the score, if there has been any data done around how the scores correlate with the grades that the students are receiving.
So I need to run that through a statistical program, excuse me. So I'm downloading the grade in the course, the score on the test, and then we'll see what the correlation is. So I don't have it with me tonight. It's just going to take me a little more time.
Perfectly fair, since I only sent it in a couple of days ago. But I would hope that that information would land with those teachers, because that's the most direct piece of data in terms of what they did in class, how is it correlating to what they have learned and are able to do. And if we have instances of grade inflation or lack of correlation, I do hope that that is something that the district will address, because I don't think it serves those students well. Not that I think I need to tell you that. What was my other one? And then overall, we did receive the data report, so thank you for that regarding the AP scores by subject. And just wondering, because there were many decreases in terms of scoring at the 5, 4, and 3, except for AP Lit. Great job by AP Lit, but other than that, there was a lot of either kind of stagnant, maybe slight growth, a lot of decreases. And I was just wondering, in general, is there anything in particular that the departments do with that data? Or is that just left up to teachers on their own, or how do we support that?
I have not currently done anything yet with the AP data at the high school level, but certainly moving forward, we'll work together with the AP Lang and the AP Lit teachers to take a look at that correlation that you asked about previously of the connection between grades and AP performance.
All right, I'll just leave that one there. Last one is that I did want to ask about slide 42. Because this is something that has been a very explicit focus of this board. It's been an explicit focus in our policy committee. It's been a focus of our district improvement plan. But we get only this snapshot in time of this enrollment and no comparison data. And if the goal is growth, I mean, obviously these numbers standing alone might be disconcerting of looking to address more students involved in advanced curriculum, but maybe that in some of these groups, it actually represents growth. And we don't know that from this snapshot. So that is definitely a piece of data I would like to see, or unless it's going to be coming out in a district improvement plan update, in which case I'm happy to wait for that. But again, it's been an explicit focus. How are we doing it, getting more students enrolled at some of these courses?
We can get those data. It's a fair point, and we have it. It's just a matter of producing it for you. So we'll have it in the next report.
Anyone else? All right. Quickly, I just have a couple. I'm going to start on slide 19, the middle school math. Understood you've given it to us by grade and by school. I'm also wondering, have you guys looked at this by course? So if you're a 6th grade student, depending on what course you're in, so you understand where I'm going with that. Have you looked at it by course?
We have not looked. So the question is the double accelerated students versus a single versus those in a typical, and how they do on the performance of the grade level test.
Yes.
So no, we have not looked at that to that level of depth.
Do you think it would be interesting?
Yes.
I'd be curious just at some point in a follow-up to say, we have 3 different courses in 6th, 4 in 7th, 3 in 8th. Is there any insight into that in terms of this or not? So that was one question that I had. The cohort on 31 and 32, for both ELA and math, the cohort drop is both between 5th and 6th, the largest drop. So in our transition years, we know transition years typically are, but since we know that to be the case, what are the interventions and strategies that we're doing to address the just sheer transition issue?
So this is an issue everywhere. We know it's not just Fairfield. This is something that we had to have a lot of conversations about, and that vertical articulation has been very, very important. Our teachers have identified certain things such as note-taking skills, study skills, text annotation skills, things like that, that need to be kids need to have that under their belts when they leave grade 5 in order to enter grade 6. So we have already identified what those areas are, and so now we have to kind of scale that and think about how we're going to help to improve and have that as part of the curriculum. So we are putting that in our new curriculum for our implementation guides moving forward, but I think you're referring to this particular year. So now that we have that information of what teachers absolutely need to have present so that students are ready for grade 6, I bet we're going to have a better chance if we have that vertical alignment there.
Anything for math in particular?
Some of the same work, really trying to strengthen the MSTs and the MRTs. I've been working on that, as well as our expectations and looking at what's taught in the previous grade and not assuming that students are coming with those skills. But it's definitely an area that's on our radar, about what we can do to strengthen that transition.
Did you have follow-up, Ms. Kennedy?
I actually had that flagged on mine as well. But if I'm reading this right, the transition years are always an issue, but I guess this would mean that the current seventh graders, right? Am I reading that correctly? So they were kind of lost in the transition there. And now that same group, if I follow the green boxes down the diagonal, those would be the current seventh graders. So are there special interventions or considerations in place for them, seeing as they seem to have been hit the hardest on both ELA and math?
So in ELA, we are strengthening our toolkit of interventions. We just recently trained both our middle and high school folks that were not trained last year in the rewards program for ELA to increase vocabulary, morphology, word attack skills, and comprehension. And so we're going to continue to build that toolkit. We have to continually add. So this way we have programs to best meet the needs of our students who need that extra support and tiered intervention. That's one of the strategies.
In terms of mathematics, the middle school has their revised schedule this year, so twice a week we do have that flex period. We're utilizing IXL, we're utilizing our curriculum data, NWEA, standardized, and as well as the SBA to really make targeted groups of instruction that the MRTs are working with during that flex time, as well as what can we do during our core periodically and sporadically to help close some of those gaps, using the data to identify deficiencies that students may have and making those explicit connections in upcoming units.
Max and Kelly?
Just one quick follow-up. If we have identified the strand weaknesses in that transition year and we have summer work, does it make sense to have the focus be intensely on that strand work?
It is when we elevate the standard there. That's exactly what we did. Absolutely.
I meant the summer work that the kids do.
Oh, the summer work that the students do.
Right, and that would be most especially pertinent to math. But if they're doing math packets and we know the strands where they are going to be weak in the subsequent year's SBA, wouldn't it make sense to target that in that assignment?
Yes, absolutely. We gave them a pre-test this year, and then we also did a post-test in order to see where individual students needed support in both ELA and math, and that's what the teachers targeted. We told them to think small and to target and homogeneously group, so this way in 18 days we can make more of an impact. Yeah.
All right, so I just have a couple more, I'll be quick. AP, I'm going to circle back to the report. Similar to Mrs. Max and Kennelly's questions, but slightly different. We have courses that have consistently over time been below the state average and haven't really changed much over time, particularly in the physics area, computer science, et cetera, those areas. What are we doing to improve those areas? Because it's not like a one-time thing, actually. It's actually been for quite the periods of time.
The physics department plans to take a look at the AP scores and do some analysis on the students' performance for last year. I also think it's about providing additional training for teachers over the summer if they feel that their instruction needs some strengthening to better align to the exam.
That's something we're going to do across those curricular areas. It's just concerning that the same couple world languages, higher level science, et cetera. So are we going to try and put something more formal together in order if that is a PD issue, just because it's not 1 year, like I said, and it just seems that every year it's the same thing. So I think we need to do something about those. And then so social studies, the AP and honors classes. I'm on slide 42, guys. What is it about social studies where across every single subgroup population, they get the highest enrollment in the honors and the AP? So, I mean, pat yourself on the back, that's great. But I mean, have we actually done focus groups? Have we talked to kids? Is it just an area of interest? Is it something they just feel more comfortable with because it's not a state mandated exam? I don't know. But when you hit every target across all domains as the highest enrollment, hey, there's still big gaps here, don't get me wrong. But I'm just saying, what are we attributing that to?
Well, we appreciate that change, and we've put forth a concerted effort. Of course, we're all familiar with the student mobility behind the new and Black and Latino Studies course. And thank you to the Board of Ed for allowing that course to be a course in which students can earn college credit. That course in and of itself increased those numbers. We've had over the years much PD with an organization by the name of Preserving Our History. And they came in and they worked with our teachers in social studies and ELA on navigating conversation. And as you know, in social studies, we lean into some very controversial topics. That's what we do. We ensure that students can investigate and have the liberty and feel empowered to investigate controversial issues and draw their own conclusions. So providing the students with that opportunity, respecting their insights, their investigation, and empowering them to draw their own conclusions, I think creates a very inclusive environment. And as I mentioned, our teachers work hard to ensure that all students feel welcome, included, and belonging.
I appreciate that. I think our math and English teachers probably do that too. So I'm just wondering, like, have we actually talked about two kids, focus groups? Like, why were you comfortable taking the social studies, but not the ELA or not the science or the math? So this is a key focus of this board in our district improvement plan, in our policies. We're going to have to do some investigation in terms of actually talking to kids if we haven't done that. If you're comfortable in this one subject area, maybe not the others, until we try to get some handle around some of this, trying to turn some of this trajectory around, I think will be hard. I think they're probably our best source, right? I mean, going directly to them is probably the best source. So not for tonight, but it's just, it's an interesting phenomena that this one subject area has the highest, and I'm just curious why that would be. Did you have a follow-up? Yeah.
If I may, I'll speak from the science department perspective. Generally, I don't recommend students take AP Sciences unless they're interested in pursuing sciences in the college. So it would make sense to me in that capacity. But I also want to add that the science department is looking to add dual enrollment courses with local universities for non-AP courses. So next year, we're going to be adding our physics and music course is going to be offered for dual credit with Quinnipiac University. And this is going to be an opportunity to get some of those students that don't traditionally take the AP Sciences. Again, to me, AP Sciences are for kids who want to study sciences in the college. This is going to be an opportunity for them to take an honors level, AP level course going forward. And I think that is a work that we can do in the other departments to strengthen those.
It's also honors, not just AP, so both just as well. Okay, so those are just things I had. Thank you. Anybody else have any last minute items? All right, thank you so much for this. Appreciate it. Okay. Next up, 2024-2025 FPS budget initiatives and drivers, Mr. Testani and Ms. Laborious.
So as we start to plan for the upcoming budget season, as you can imagine, the biggest driver in the upcoming budget will continue to be salary and benefits of our staff. As you're all aware, we did settle a new teacher's contract, which will be coming before this board at our next meeting, which will have implications on the increase to the budget as well. In terms of initiatives, there's nothing excitingly new that we plan for next year. We were pretty aggressive last year in implementing a number of things that we're currently still working with and working through with staff, with professional learning, and getting them comfortable with use of new assessments, Parent Square, data, and a number of other things. And as you're going to see in a little bit, the new ELA curriculum, pre-K 12. So I don't anticipate any big initiatives, so to speak, but really trying to get everyone the support they need to make sure that everything we're currently doing, we're doing extremely well prior to moving on to anything new for the upcoming year or in future years.
Mrs. Maxon Kennelly.
So always prepare anything, always appreciate anything that's preparing us for that presentation. So I have to ask, as the follow-up to initiatives and drivers, is offsets. Anything out there that you're looking at as areas where, and if it's too early to say that, that's fine, but just.
Nothing specific, but always looking for offsets. We have been asked, one thing that and we'll talk about on the personnel line for the coming year, just some more eyes and supervision at the high school level, just maintaining a safe environment for everyone. So possibly introducing some, I don't want to say security officers, but some, maybe climate specialists, restorative practice folks, somebody that just more eyes and ears around the building. It is a challenge, especially in today's culture, as we're all aware. Students are easily accessible in lavatories to participate in activities that we don't support. So much different than years past. So that's been an ask from the high school principals, and that could be a driver for the coming year. But that's not a heavy lift or anything like that, just more eyes and ears around the building to make sure that we can keep everyone safe and secure.
No one else? Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, moving on to old business. Adoption of policy 5144.4, recess, play-based learning, and discipline. Recommended motion that Mrs. Maxon Kennelly that the Board of Education adopt policy 5114.4, recess, play-based learning, and discipline. Second, Mr. Asa, any discussion? Public comment on this item? All right, back to the board. All in favor? Motion passes 8-0. Thank you. Next, adoption of curriculum American Sign Language 3, that the Board of Education adopt the curriculum American Sign Language 3. Can I get a motion, please? Mrs. Ritelli, seconded by Mr. Peterson. Any discussion? Mrs. Maxon Kennelly.
Just wanted to say a word of thanks to whoever put whoever on staff put together the data regarding how the rise in enrollment of our ASL courses has impacted our other departments. Obviously, we talk about how we don't have curriculum audits because the students speaking is our internal audit. So while it's sad to see certain subjects take a little bit of a decrease, I don't want to say a dive, a decrease, obviously it's a reflection of something they're interested in. So, but I do appreciate whoever put together those numbers.
Anyone else? All right, take it out. Oops, sorry. Any public comment on this item? Seeing no one, back to the board. All in favor? Motion passes unanimously 8-0. New business, first reading of the 2024-2025 student calendar. Mr. Testani, you want to make any comments? Or Dr. Parrish, hi.
Well, just one comment. You will notice there is a green circle around August 21st, which is an extra day for staff to report. That was one of the items that was negotiated in the teacher's contract, that we would have teaching staff report one day early, and in exchange for the one day early, they would receive a full day to set up classrooms and prepare to receive students. So just that's noteworthy. We also have reduced the number of early dismissal days from this current year, which was a reduction from last year as well, by one from 6 to 5. Dr. Parrish, anything you'd like to add?
The only other change was during February, changing the no school day from that Friday to the Tuesday following President's Day.
The rationale was to, if we were going to disrupt, we disrupted 1 week and not 2 weeks.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Asa. Oh, Mrs. Kennelly?
Just one question, because that day in August was taken from May where we had PD. So I was wondering if you could characterize the nature of how has that been used for these last couple of years for PD? So what is it that we are giving up by moving it to August? And I'm not opposed to the move, just wondering what that means for staff.
Typically, that's been the time frame where schools have shared their progress to date on their school improvement plans and started some preliminary work towards the development of their SIP for the following school year. But most of that work is done during the summer with a smaller team that then presents the new plan to the staff in the fall.
And so therefore, how will that be compensated for?
So that, I mean, it wasn't the entire day. They did other things, based on the needs of the school during the other time. So looking at some of the staff meetings, the Tuesday meetings, figuring out when it might be best to do some of that sharing out and some of that preliminary work. They have to use some of the Tuesday meeting time for that.
Thank you.
I think it was a consensus that the day after Memorial Day was not as useful as having a day of prep prior to receiving students.
Go ahead.
So I just have a couple comments on this, and I may bring forth something depending on the board's feeling at the next meeting. But just going down the list here. So one thing I noticed, obviously with the way Christmas falls in 24, we are going to have, 8 weekdays off, throw the weekends in there, and it's a long time. So I'm questioning whether we need to get out early on the 20th. So I think that can be a full day of school. The January 7th being on what I just said, that we're going to have, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 days off, including weekends, and then coming back for 3 days and having an early dismissal for PD on January 7th. I would like to look to the administration to see if we could push that back further to another date. So I'd be curious if there's any suggestions, and I can follow up with the superintendent on that. And if I were to bring forth anything, I would give the board notice and send, as I have in the past, a write-up of a motion. With regard to the February break, I understand the idea of keeping it in 1 week, but I also think there's some benefit to having the day off on the 14th. Mr. Testani alluded to a national trend of people trying to take time off when others aren't. Having that day, the 14th, which generally does not fall under a holiday period, can be beneficial to some that do want to break. So I would like to look to put that back there and increase the time off. Obviously, President's Day or Washington's birthday, we need off. So I wish we could put both days on the week before. And then finally, I am curious, this has come up and this has been very controversial in the past. And I don't know if controversial is the right word, but over the years, we've gone back and forth on the idea of Veterans Day being a day off. And a lot of the districts around us have focused on using that day to actually educate our kids on the veterans, their sacrifices, and what it means. And I don't really think, we're getting an assembly at schools generally, while we're still in. But I'm curious for the feedback from the board if this is something that they would be interested in, maybe using the Veterans Day holiday instead of being in school, and using that time more dedicated to some sort of curriculum on the importance and the meaning of Veterans Day. And I don't know if anybody wants to share their thoughts now, but I'd welcome, if anybody wants to, well, I don't want to conduct business outside of the table. So if anybody has any comments, if there's a lot of pushback, our dear friend Tom Quinn in town, God rest his soul, he was very adamant about having the Veterans Day off, and I understood that, but I also wonder if the idea of really focusing that day on the importance of Veterans Day could be beneficial. So if anybody has any comments.
Mr. Peterson.
Just in general, I get where you're coming from with that. I am proud that our school system already has kind of robust memorial type programming. I am reluctant to tell our veterans and veterans families communities that this is something that they need to fight for again. I would be hesitant to remove it as a day off.
Mrs. Vitale.
I concur with Mr. Peterson on that. I will probably not be on the board voting on this calendar, but I'm not looking to lose that holiday. I hear you, Mr. Asa, about just having the programming in our schools for our kids, but having gone to McKinley last week, I know that our veterans have been very generous with their time, but I think if we just say that veteran that day, everyone's going to have the programming, it might be hard for our veterans to actually deliver that. And also that day is also having it off. It allows them to spend time with their families rather than providing programming in schools. And I would encourage, our families to attend the Veterans Day ceremony at the Honor Wall on Veterans Day. I know some of our scouts and our students do participate in that. But I'm not looking to change it right now, but appreciate bringing it up and thank our veterans for all the programming they have provided to our students over the years.
I guess that's it. Nothing from anybody else that's going to be here.
Mrs. Maximino, and
you will be voting on it, so.
The 20th.
I wasn't sure if you were going to treat the 20th as a regular meeting or just.
It'll be special, but this will be on it.
Okay.
Mrs. Maximino.
Ms. Vitale, were you done?
I have a question, but not if it's something different. Go ahead.
Okay. First of all, December 20th, thank you. I completely agree about that with that much time off. And actually I definitely agree about the January 7th. The February, I guess I would the rationale that you mentioned for that, I think is a very good point. If someone were looking to get away that weekend, they'd get better rates on the 13th than they're going to get on the 14th. But again, I'd be curious, I would want to hear more from staff in terms of exactly why the change was made, why that makes a difference. I also think it's a better idea regarding our chronic absenteeism to not have a 3-day week. I think that's an invitation or a temptation I'd love to avoid. Regarding Veterans Day, I'm very torn on that. I mean, when I first joined the board, I was interested in exploring that further, not looking to get any groups upset or anything like that. I just think to actually have a strong curricular focus on the day so that the purpose of the day itself, it's not meant to be a week-long, event. It's not meant to be an off-day event. It's meant to be on that day. And to actually have something in the curriculum in addition to assembly, I think it offers rich potential. That said, it's certainly controversial in its nature, so I struggle with it, but I've been intrigued by the thought for years of how we could really make this a special celebration. And the assemblies themselves are good. I just think the curriculum could take it even further on that day, and that's what's always intrigued me. But so I'm going to let you sit with that non-answer.
We're also looking at this in policy, unless you'd like to speak of that. So we are under review of the current administrative regulations, which lists out the days that we try to avoid and not avoid, updating that. So, Mr. Issa, I mean, this is ongoing conversation and policies too, so maybe not for next week, but all of the days, Columbus Day and whatnot, sorry, Juneteenth, et cetera. Mrs. Maxon Kennelly.
I just want to follow up on that point, just so that the board is clear. The policy will not be ready to come to the board prior to this vote, but it is part of our current conversation.
Yeah, and with that, I think that's a very little bit of feedback, but maybe this isn't the right time to explore the Veterans Day holiday. I appreciate those of you that spoke out. So that's probably not something, just so the public knows, they don't need to mobilize. It's not something that I'm like trying to push. I appreciate the feedback, and but the other dates that I did mention, I will probably bring something forward.
Sure, go ahead.
We could push out the January 7th to the 14th. I would probably stay away from the 21st. 14th, if that makes it more acceptable. Again, not as worried about the chronic absenteeism on a 3-day week when you look at, we're going to have a 2-day week, January 2nd and 3rd, which I will imagine it'll be a lot cheaper to travel on the 4th or the 5th than it's going to be sooner. So, I mean, it's something to consider, but unfortunately, the airline industry and hospitality can't drive the way we plan.
Do you have a trip planned that day, Mr. Issa?
No, I don't.
Just wondering if this is.
Not on vacation.
You didn't like the little letter you got now.
I think Mr. Ace is a romantic and he wanted to take Valentine's Day off.
That's definitely it. So to Mr. Testani, though, regarding the 2 days in a row in February, and to Mrs. Maxon Kennelly's point, is there any kind of like academic thrust or staff thrust pushing this, or was this just an idea?
No, it was just to maintain some consistency of 5-day weeks and instruction prior to any disruption. That's basically what it was. So we would have, after the Martin Luther King Day holiday, we would have a 4-day, a 5, a 5, a 5, and then we get a couple of days, a short week prior to the long stretch from February 19th all the way through the April break.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Parrish. This will be up at our next meeting. Okay, first reading of pre-K to 12 English language arts curriculum. Ms. Goss.
We are so excited to be here. It has been a very busy past few months. So Janine Goss, Executive Director, Pre-K-12 Literacy. We made a pact that we are going to spend the next 20 minutes highlighting for you the details of the work that we have done. And of course, we are available for lots of questions afterwards. I am joined by my colleagues, but I will tell you, this is a very small sampling of the 100+ colleagues that worked on pre-K through 12 curricula over the past couple of months. We're going to quickly introduce ourselves so that you know who's at the table, and we will all share a part in the presentation.
Hi, Kristen Bruno, Program Director, Early Childhood Special Education.
Julie Sherwood, a literacy specialist at Burr Elementary School.
Trudy Durrell, ELML specialist at North Stratfield and Mill Hill Schools.
Rita Mockler, language arts specialist at Tomlinson Middle School.
I'm Jenny Ingram, and I teach English at Fairfield Ludlow High School, and I'm the department liaison there as well.
Hello, I'm Ross Novick. I teach English at Fairfield Ward High School, and I'm the department liaison there as well.
And I'm still Julie Heller, the program director for ELA grades 6 through 12.
So you should know that we also had principals on our team. We had assistant principals, library media specialists, special education teachers, language arts specialists. We had English learner teachers. We even had a speech and language pathologist help us in this endeavor, program directors, high school department liaisons that you see here, and most importantly, we had classroom teachers. So our task was to provide a pre-K-12 vertically aligned, culturally responsive ELA curricula. And we were using what is called the Understanding by Design Framework, UBD. And you will see in the Friday packet that part of the UBD process is in the drafts that you see before you. So I want to stress, though, that this is only a part of UBD. This is not the full process. What we are proposing tonight is about half of the full UBD process that articulates the what. It articulates what it is that will be taught grade to grade. And it also articulates what are those core resources that every single teacher at that grade level will have access to choose from. The how of what we're teaching will be in our implementation guides. And once this is approved, we hopefully anticipate approval on our special meeting next week, then we can begin the work of articulating the how. And that is exactly where all that flexibility comes in terms of how teachers are going to approach this curriculum. We are extremely proud of what we've accomplished, and we do look forward to the drafts. We do look forward to your consideration, rather, on the drafts. I will also share with you that we posted these on our website. We've shared the drafts with all pre-K-12 educators who are affected, and we continue to elicit feedback from them. We held 2 sessions for our families last week and this past week so that they can come and preview the drafts, ask questions, and view the materials. They've also had an opportunity to provide feedback, and we look forward to receiving more. Overall, just to quickly share, major changes. We had to make sure that the work that we did was aligned with the science of reading. That's that scientific, research-based body of research. So in K2, as we take a look at the structured literacy approach, that is a very explicit and systematic approach to the teaching of foundational skills. That is something we are absolutely going to follow. And the other big sort of global change is that our units are very much content-based. They're mostly aligned to science and social studies content and topics, especially in pre-K-5, but it really has become more of a focus when we think about the upper grades as well. So even though there might be a literary unit at the middle school, for example, we brought in other informational text to help support that and build a text set so students had opportunities to read more informational text as well. So I'm going to start with the first slide here, which is a summary of how we've allocated funds to support the purchase of materials, to pay teachers for the hours that they worked on designing curricula, as well as professional development. And I've included a summary, and I know it's small here, so I'm really glad that you have this in front of you, of what has been paid to date. If you look at that last column, for each of the grade bands, I've articulated what has been paid, what is still scheduled to be paid in this year's budget, which we've already budgeted for, next year's budget, as well as in 2025. Some of the costs that you see here have already been discussed at the board table, while other costs have recently been added as our request in our next budgets. So in grades 6 through 8, for example, we would like to purchase Houghton Mifflin Harcourt's Into Literature digital access for each of our ELA teachers. So this way they have a common resource to reference for guidance. That resource will also provide them with a library of text that they can choose from in addition to the core texts that have already been pulled out either from that resource or many others that they've already been using. Teacher feedback also indicated that they would also love to have a hard copy of the teacher manual. So this way they can reference that for planning purposes. This is a one-time cost. Digital access is a yearly cost. It's about $100 per teacher, but the hard copy of the teacher manual is a one-time cost. Now, we also used NYU's culturally responsive scorecard for the text selections to ensure that we were representing diverse characters, diverse authors. And then you'll see here that we had to add some additional text to sort of round out our collection, and we very strategically did that. And so we're going to be asking for some funding in our next year's budget in order to accommodate that request. Another important payment to notice in that right column under K5 is that right to read grant allocation for $155,500. We just received that allocation. We will pay HMH in the next couple of weeks. This was already scheduled to happen. And we also expect to receive that same amount next year around the same time of year. So, taking a look at the resources here that we purchased. Again, to be very clear, these resources will support the implementation of curricula. In pre-K5, you'll see that we extracted from World of Wonders as well as HMH's content, HMH's into reading rather, the content and skills and their scope and sequence that will be taught. So we also relied on their text sets. They were already there. And they put together so beautifully, so this way we build students' background knowledge as well as their vocabulary. So these are texts that, as I said, will be provided to all teachers. These will be the core text. It does not mean teachers have to use every single text that's in that core text set, but that's what we're going to say in terms of coherence and alignment, everybody has access to. So in planning, they will decide if they want to choose 3 out of the 5 texts, let's say, that will meet the best needs of their students. They have beautiful libraries. They can also bring in text that they know will help support the teaching of that unit and those standards as well. The only guidance that we will follow from HMH is related to the structured literacy lessons for foundational skills. We will follow those lessons because they are explicit and systematic, and we do need to adhere to that. However, the rest of the manual is not a page turner. Again, that's guidance. That's guidance for instructional planning. Teacher teams still need to plan for instruction for the students that are in front of them, and these resources will really help us meet the needs of students who need to be challenged, for students who are learning English as a second language, and who may require extra support. So we're pretty happy with the abundance of material that we're going to receive. That was a quick overview. Now I want to start and share with you what started to happen on May 30th. So on May 30th, we started the work on that vertical alignment of pre-K through 12 ELA curricula. We worked with Jay McTighe, who is one of the developers of the UBD framework. We also worked with our consultant, Dr. Maureen Ruby from Sacred Heart University. And with all of our colleagues in place here in this room, about 100 of them, pre-K through 12, we made some decisions about what we wanted students in Fairfield to be able to transfer outside of the classroom in unknown situations. That's really the goal of curriculum, is to make sure that there's transfer of learning. So I have to say that was a pretty easy task because Fairfield had already established what we call the vision of a graduate. And the vision of a graduate are those transferable skills, knowledge, dispositions that we want students to have when they leave Fairfield Public Schools. So as you see in this very first bullet, we are embedding opportunities for students to be communicators, collaborators, critical thinkers, goal-oriented, resilient learners, responsible citizens, and innovators. So in addition to those, we also took a look at the ELA anchor standards. And we looked at what transferable content and skills we wanted students to leave Fairfield with. And so we've identified in all of those areas there that you see there, in terms of, let's see here, opportunities to write, analyze text, research skills, practice digital citizenship skills. These are going to be ever present pre-K through 12. The other glue in terms of this vertical alignment are the essential questions. So when we had everybody in the room at the same time, We look to see which universal concepts would spiral from grade to grade and year to year. And the curriculum designers agreed on essential questions in those course overviews. So on that very first page of each of the core courses, pre-K through 12, you're going to see the exact same essential questions. They are broad, and in the actual modules or units, you're going to see a variation of those in an age-appropriate way. So again, that's the glue that ties us. That's that third bullet. Conflict, identity, change, culture. These are all things that are going to show up pre-K through grade 12. And every single year, students will deepen their understanding. Last but not least, the essential questions related to the ELA anchor standards. We also vertically align those to ensure that students were revisiting these honestly each and every day. Things like, how do I develop my writer's voice? What do good readers do? Those kinds of essential questions. The glue that you don't see on this slide, which I already mentioned in terms of the implementation guides, will be around those core instructional practices that we want to make sure we are doing each and every year, so that when students go from 3rd to 4th, 5th to 6th, 8th to 9th, and so on, those practices will be in place. So that's another part of the glue. So Kristen's going to share a little bit of the highlights around pre-K.
Hi, so I'm here representing the 3 teachers and 1 speech and language pathologist that worked over the summer on the curriculum, and then the entire teaching, speech and language, and school psychology faculty from ECC that worked through the fall to develop the curriculum units. We developed our pre-K curricula looking at the aligning with the early learning and development standards. Those were enacted by the state in 2014, just after our last curriculum revision. So we were excited. We've been working with them, and we were excited to incorporate them into these documents. And then the resource that we had selected, which is the World of Wonders. The ELDS looks at a variety. The early learning and development standards provides us with learning progressions across the age range in a number of areas, including cognition, social emotional development, physical development and health, creative arts, math, science, social studies, and then of course, language and literacy. So the standards for language and literacy in pre-K include receptive, expressive, and social language, book appreciation and knowledge, print concepts, phonological awareness, as well as drawing and writing. The ELDS also provides learning progressions for dual language learners, so we use that as well in looking at the curriculum work we were doing. Pre-K is unique in that it's not a one-year grade level. Kids come into our program as they turn 3, as they enroll as peers, or as they're found eligible through the special education process. So when we look at curriculum writing, we embed strategies. So kids are going to revisit this curriculum. They might be with us for less than a year. Some kids could be with us for 2.5, 3 years based on when they come in. So looking at writing the curriculum, we look at modeling, we look at repeated exposure as well as small group and individual instruction to be sure every child is moving across those developmental progressions. World of Wonders is our primary resource. We will continue to integrate the Hegarty pre-K. There's a 3-year-old and a 4-year-old resource for the Hegarty that we will continue to use as a supplemental resource, as well as when we do our implementation guides, looking at the Bridges math curriculum and Move This World as the social curriculum that we'll be using. Another unique thing that we love about the pre-K curricula is that there are 8 units that every child will participate in, but there are also opportunities throughout the year for brief teacher choice units.
So as we know in pre-K, student interest is everything. You want to give them time to explore topics of interest. So there's the ability, if your class is really into dinosaurs, you can do a quick unit on dinosaurs. If they really love the work of Eric Carle, you can do a book study around Eric Carle's writing. So there are those times during the school year to integrate teacher choice, student interest, as well as the set units that every child will experience.
Good evening, everyone. Again, I'm Julie Sherwood, the reading specialist, literacy specialist at Burr Elementary School. I'm happy to be here. So as Janine said before, K-5 has new integrated reading and writing units that we call modules that are aligned with science, social studies, the arts, and literary topics. We say they're integrated because they're not separate documents. Rather, they complement each other by the genre being taught. Literary expert Tim Shanahan, a distinguished professor and author of many literary publications, said it best. Reading and writing are related, and we teach students how to combine reading and writing for different purposes. For example, readers who write understand how authors create effects, which is valuable to understand text. Writers who read learn what readers need, helping them improve their writing process, which is extremely important. The same is true with writing about reading. Writing about reading helps clarify and deepen understanding of text read. This dual engagement process enhances both reading and writing skills. Reading and writing depend upon many of the same skills, strategies, and knowledge, although they are deployed in many different ways. So having them be taught together in this model is very effective. Thinking about how we teach decoding and encoding in the same way are reciprocal processes. One helps out the other. The other important thing to note around integration is that the content and skills outlined in this document, they're taught through the context of both reading and writing, so it's not separate documents. Each grade level has 9 to 10 modules developed across cross-disciplinary connections are noted in the documents when they support and deepen student understanding of the science and social studies topics. So for example, in grade kindergarten, roles and responsibilities are studied in a social studies unit that align with Module 3. Another example, in grade 4, you'll notice that the alignment in Module 2 of the ELA curriculum to the science unit on waves and information processing. These connections are called out in the individual modules, module resource sections when they exist.
We're sharing this slide. Again, I'm Trudy Durrell, and I am the ELML teacher at North Stratfield and at Mill Hill. And I had the pleasure of working in May and then throughout the summer on the ELA curriculum with so many of the people here at the table with me and representing many people who are not here, including members of my ELML team, as well as a variety of grade levels. You'll notice that handwriting is more present in this curriculum because the research on handwriting is very compelling. It improves the ability for young children to learn letters, and it can have a positive impact on reading-related learning disabilities. So in Fairfield Public Schools, we'll continue to support the importance of teaching manuscript handwriting in grades K through 2, but cursive handwriting will now begin to be taught at the end of grade 2. And teaching students that fluency of cursive handwriting is going to be an important addition to the work that we're already doing. Integrity phonemic awareness is already being implemented in grades K to 2 and K to 1, excuse me, and that will continue because it has been very successful using this resource as the students develop their phonological and phonemic awareness, which is their ability to work with sounds in spoken language, and that sets them up for successful word reading. There is extensive research on how this work supports their word reading as they grow, how oral language is critical to that process. And in addition, we will now intentionally embed some of the literacy how strategies from the teacher resource texts in grade K through 3, in the implementation guides that we will be working with as they align to the modules. Kindergarten staff has attended the Literacy How PD last year, and grades 1 and 2 are attending this year, and hopefully grade 3 will be included next year.
Again, I'm Rita Mockler, and I'm representing our middle schools. I work at Tomlinson Middle School. So we had some exciting work took place with our grades 6 through 12. Many units were revised and enhanced, some were added, and some were eliminated. We added additional text to our units to ensure representation of both fiction and nonfiction, as well as ensuring diversity both in authors and characters. At the high school, 3 new elective courses were added. Students provided input through a survey and voted for a true crimes course as well as a sports literature course. A second journalism course was added, advanced journalism that could now be part of a future pathway for students in areas of public service, journalism, health, wellness, or criminal justice. Our high school designers also had important conversations about college prep classes and honors classes and the difference between the two.
Again, I'm Jenny Ingram from Ludlow High School, and I'm here to talk a little bit about the difference between the college prep and honors level classes at the high school. So in addition to accessing and mastering grade level content and skills, students in honors classes are expected to work a lot more independently. They're expected to be able to access grade level texts without additional support and to use the sort of support of a teacher to access more challenging books that are above grade level. Because of this, they're able to read and analyze complex works of literature and read a greater number of texts across a school year. They read and write at generally a much quicker pace, which doesn't mean sort of in the classroom, like quickly reading, quickly writing, or that they're necessarily the fastest of readers. I'll have a lot of students come to me in writing conferences to set their goals, and they'll say, well, I want to be a faster reader. I'm like, well, that goal will take a while to develop, right? Over time, I'm much more concerned with your reading for comprehension, analysis, and interpretation. And sometimes that takes longer, which is fine. But students in honors classes tend to be able to spend more time and have the capacity to understand those books at home in addition to the work that we do in class. And so they're able to just do more work and more complex work above grade level over the course of the year. This translates not only to their work with reading texts, but also to their work with writing. There is less scaffolding in honors classes for writing instruction, and there's more independence with writing instruction and honors levels and AP classes as well. And in CP classes, there's more in-class instruction about writing strategies and skills, and a lot more help with some of the things that get students ready to be right on grade level and to move forward in their high school career and into college.
So I just want to take a moment to thank the teachers who are here, because this makes a really long night for them. They're all getting up early and going in to work with your children. So thank you to them and to all the English teachers and elementary teachers and everyone else who's worked on this curriculum. I just want to echo what Janine said earlier. It was a lot of hard work. So we realized as we were having conversations about the curriculum that there was an opportunity here to consider the elective program that we are offering high school students. So we decided to do a couple of surveys. So the first survey that you see on the screen, I asked English teachers to respond. Do you want to add a new elective? Are you interested in adding new electives to the program? We have 37 English teachers across both high schools, or all three high schools, and we got 28 responses, and the majority of people responded that, yes, in fact, they were interested in adding new electives. So could someone click to the next slide? I don't have the clicker. Oh, thank you. Sorry. We also wanted to, of course, hear from the students. Someone mentioned that earlier in the meeting. Why aren't we talking to the students? So we did, in fact, reach out to current juniors, sorry, and we asked them to consider what they might like to take if they were interested in the electives program. I first solicited ideas for a number of courses from the English department. There's a long list. You'll see it on 2 slides. There were so many options and courses that teachers thought about that they thought the kids might be interested in or engaged by. If you want to go to the next slide. So the pie chart, if you can see the 2 biggest pieces of pie there, the green 23.2%, that actually represents the true crime course that came in as the #1 choice for kids. They found that would be something they'd really be interested in taking. And then the purple slice of pie is sports literature. So that's how we got to those 2 new electives, and they are written up for you and in the documents.
So Fairfield has a robust selection of offerings of electives, including the 3 new ones. Right now, students from grade 10 can begin to take electives in grade 11 as well. But if you're taking electives in grades 10 or 11, you're taking that elective in addition to a full year English class, whereas seniors can elect to take 2 electives to count as a full year English. Now, this is a wonderful opportunity because we have a diverse group of students with diverse interests and needs, and we have electives for pretty much everyone there. We have 2 journalism classes. We have the new sports literature, poetry, satire, the true crime, contemporary global lit, supernatural lit, film analysis, gender perspectives, creative writing, literature of the well-being, and a nature literature course called Call of the Wild. So pretty much we have something for everyone, and we have a healthy number of students who are participating in the electives program.
Last but not least, we do look forward to next Monday's meeting with the anticipated approval of the drafts. Then we will get hard at work on the implementation guides. The implementation guides will include the common summative assessment for each of the units and modules with associated success criteria or rubrics, and then other common formative assessments as well. So one of the things we will do is take a look at those IABs, leverage the data that we have on those targets, and we will organically and strategically embed the IABs right into our curriculum. It will also contain those assured and key learning experiences that will help students achieve the goals of the assessment and the unit outcomes. Then when we get to January, we do have a district pre-K-12 PD opportunity on January 9th. We're going to call that our next kickoff. We had a May 30th kickoff to start this process and a January 9th kickoff to start our professional learning. We will have 1 opportunity per month, so about 6 touch points between January and August in order to prepare teachers to use new resources and to take a look at the new units and prepare for implementation in the fall. We very much appreciate the amount of time that you took to help support us throughout this process. This was not an easy process. Our goal is to make sure that we are meeting the needs of each and every learner in our district. And we know that this curriculum can do that. It can't do that on its own, though. We need professional learning. The teacher is the one that does this, the teaching, and their expertise is absolutely essential. And so we have to also invest in our teachers here. What you see before you is the what we're going to teach, not the how. So we are available for any questions you may have. Thank you.
I'd just like to add, I want to thank all of you. We talk a lot about team efforts, but this truly was a team effort from pre-K all the way through 12 to have so many talented and dedicated staff members from across the district come together. As Janine said, over 100 committed educators to our students and their success. I cannot thank you enough, and to all the others that are not here tonight. It's much appreciated, your efforts, and I look forward to seeing so many happy children as they come into the new courses in high school and they're able to build their skills from pre-K all the way on through. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for the presentation. Before we get to the curriculum documents, does anyone have any questions on that handout that we got tonight before we get into any questions on the curriculum? No? Oh, Mrs. Maxon Kelly.
Just from the presentation, first regarding the pre-K curricula, I'm curious if this is something that parents ask after to see the curriculum, and if we have any idea of how what we are doing to meet their needs compares with the private schools of Fairfield. Again, and I say that obviously you know the other agenda, which is the increased enrollments to help with our reach that 50-50 ratio. So I was wondering how what we're looking to do with this compares, and do parents ask about this?
So parents were invited to the curriculum review nights that were offered. On occasion, I do direct, and the pre-K information sheet, I think, directs to the website for the district curriculum. The pre-Ks and daycares in town are really varied in their approaches to instruction. We do have a teacher, Rachel Capello, who's our evaluation team teacher, is frequently asked to do professional development for them. So I would say in a sense we have an influence there, but there's quite a variety if you're looking for something play-based, if you're looking for something that's more academic, or if you're looking for longer hours for care. So I think there's a lot of factors other than the curriculum.
I completely agree. I guess I'm just wanting some assurance that what we're doing with the Hegarty, phonemic awareness, that what we're doing with the teacher choice units, et cetera, that it is the equal of what's being offered privately. If we're trying to attract these students, we need to be offering them that kind of preparation for kindergarten. So that was the reason for my question, but I'll leave that. Another question I had was regarding the K through 5 curricula. And again, obviously lots of other questions, but just based on the presentation, there's the mention that the 9 to 10 modules per grade are aligned with the science, the social studies, arts, and literary topics. How does that work? And I ask, and I just took a quick peek as a reminder at social studies as an easy one. So that we've grade 3, we have the focus on Fairfield and Connecticut. In grade 5, there's the focus on the American Revolution, the early settlements, the indigenous tribes, French and Indian War. How does the literacy work and the K through 5 ELA curriculum serve to support those specific content areas?
So we're never going to find a resource out there that completely aligns perfectly, right, with our science and social studies units. Plus, we know social studies is changing a little bit when the new content standards have come out. What we're looking to do is we're looking to build general background knowledge about stuff. And it's not a very eloquent way to say it, but it does help to improve students' ability to comprehend what they read when they know a lot of stuff about things, right? Again, not so eloquent, but that's part of the science of reading, is that building text sets. And that's what was nice about some of these resources we looked at. They already arranged the text sets for us, fiction, nonfiction, all kinds of different subgenres around a particular topic to build students' knowledge and perspective from various authors fiction, nonfiction, very, very important. So as we build their vocabulary and background knowledge, it impacts their comprehension. Now, with science and social studies, we didn't force it. Where it organically fit is where we showed that alignment. The job of the classroom teacher, I mean, they're jacks of all trades, right? They have to teach everything. Their job, though, through the ELA curricula is not to teach the standards of science and social studies. It is to support it, to your point. So through the readings, building the background knowledge, and I keep saying in the vocabulary, that's where that through line is. So again, where it fit, we did align it. Where it was a force, we did not.
Okay, and I think you know this already, you do not have to sell me on the gaining of knowledge and stuff. I'm totally on with it. I was simply wondering, how did that work correctly with what we have already for curriculum? But one of that actually brings up something that I believe, Ms. Goss, you're the one that said that there was a degree of choice for teachers in terms of the content, not the skills when it comes to the phonemic awareness, et cetera, the decoding, that they have to follow because that's a very explicit instruction that each builds on the other for those K through 2, that there's no choice there. But you indicated choice in content, and that just raised the alarm of to what degree, and again, I love the choice of having teachers have some autonomy and have some choice. However, we don't want there to be choice of missing content. So I guess I was unclear on what exactly is the choice available to our teachers there.
I shouldn't have said that. If I said that, I'm going to watch it back because that's not what I meant. The content and the skills that you see in the curricula units, they come from the standards, right? The standards were unpacked in order to see what content and skills. So for example, main idea and details, right? Those are generic no matter what resource we would have put in front of teachers. Didn't matter. What we did was we extracted from HMH, for example, the content and the skills for each of the strands of the standards. That has to remain consistent. That's what we're saying absolutely has to be taught at a minimum. There was other content and skills in HMH that we did not extract. We extracted what the most important content and skills were. We could never possibly teach every single thing in that resource. So we strategically did that. That doesn't change. We follow that scope and sequence. The flexibility comes in implementation. And that's where student achievement will be raised. It's not just because we have this document or we have that resource.
Okay, thank you. The other question I had was, obviously this happens every time we have a curriculum update, which is what do we do for our second graders who didn't get this in kindergarten and first grade? And for every other grade, but that's the easy one to target because I can only imagine how intensive this work is in K through 2
Absolutely.
To deliver. So therefore, what does that mean for our second graders?
Well, we're building teachers' background knowledge. That's a part of it. The professional learning that they're receiving right now with Literacy How is critical around the science of reading and around structured literacy in terms of that systematic and explicit instruction. We have purchased decodable text. And last year we spent several meetings working with our language arts specialists to turnkey training to our classroom teachers on how to implement a decodable text routine, making sure that we're using the content from, let's say, the core phonics survey. That is one of the assessments that we kept on hand this year, very, very important, so that we can identify where exactly students are in terms of their word to text skills, and then we match the decodable text to it. So you will see elements of structured literacy right now in our classrooms, and as we continue to build teacher capacity, it's going to get even better. But we're really happy about the structured literacy lesson plans that HMH provides. They even give you slides. I mean, it's all there for you, and you don't mess with that scope and sequence. You just don't. You don't take a chance. We should be able to reach 95% of our students with our instruction in the foundational skills area. There's no excuse for that. We should be able to. And then there will be some students that need extra support, and we're, like I said before, building our toolkit of other resources for tiered intervention. So,
thank you. Then I'm just going to throw the rest of the three out. They're more towards the secondary. There was a reference made, and I apologize, I don't remember who said it, that things were removed as we're looking to add 3 new electives. I didn't hear what was being removed. Second question, I was wondering what prompted the move towards advanced journalism when that was not one of the courses indicated as being an area of interest. And then second, the issue of levels. Because having looked at the difference in levels and having some experience myself with more levels than what Fairfield has, I'm curious if that was any part of this discussion, because Fairfield did used to have an additional level. That also correlate, going to the middle school, but I think that was a follow-up question that Ms. Jacobson might want to ask, of looking at our 8th grade transition and better supporting our 8th graders trying to make a move to 9 honors, for example. So I'm not sure who for any of those. So again, the questions were what was removed, why advanced journalism, and the discussion of levels, both in 8th grade and in high school.
So what was removed? So you all have a copy of a pretty detailed T-chart that goes from pre-K through 12 that indicates what existed in the previous curriculum and the changes that we are making in the new documents. So an example of that would be in the 8th grade curriculum, for example, there was a unit that existed that was really focused on teaching students how to read and comprehend dramatic literature. That was shifted to a poetry unit. But all of that is detailed for you on the T-chart that you have. Advanced journalism.
I have no idea what chart you're talking about.
If you don't have it, then we will
We
make sure
put
you
it
have
in
it.
the Thursday packet, since we weren't here Friday. It was a link with all of the rest of the curricular documents. The T-chart document was included, yes.
Well, if you don't have it now, we can make sure you have it, when we leave here. But it is a pretty detailed T-chart.
It's very important. I'm sorry. I linked it. I'm sorry.
There was an email today at 3:57, the handout for the T-chart. Oh, no,
That wasn't our T-chart, though.
That was a different T-chart,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah. We'll get that to you tonight. No worries. Absolutely. Sorry about that.
Okay, so advanced journalism was a course that was already sort of in the works toward, I believe, the end of the last school year. The journalism program, people who were involved in that were looking to really grow the program. And right now, the way the journalism classes exist, there's an introduction to journalism. That is in the English department. There's a broadcast journalism class that I believe lives in the library world. I'm not sure exactly where it is. And not all students who take journalism contribute to the paper, and the papers are very different across the school. So there wasn't really a very robust or unified journalism program. So adding an advanced journalism class is an opportunity for those students who are really serious about journalism to start to work at higher levels. So it's really moving that forward. So no, it wasn't a part of that survey, but it was something that teachers had ascertained kids had an interest in, and it was an opportunity to make it a more robust program. I forget your third question.
Levels.
Okay, what about levels?
2 things. One, the fact that the middle school have no levels. And second, the idea of adding an additional level at the high school in all grades, A grade. That's the question.
I can't speak to the history of levels here. I can offer you, my opinion of levels. I don't know that the middle school programs are really the right place to start leveling students. I think they're still building those foundational skills that they will need moving into the high school, being able to comprehend those texts and have conversations. I'm not personally in favor of levels at the middle school level, in middle school. At the high school, I believe at one point maybe there was an additional level. I think people have moved away from that as we've tried to form more heterogeneously grouped classes.
We know that this was a request of the board in terms of a level over at the middle school. We know that that was stated here at the board table. We didn't feel that we could accomplish that with this task currently. That's something we need to look at further. But what we did do to reiterate what I shared earlier was we worked with our 5th to 6th grade teachers and our 8th to 9th grade teachers on that transition in order to make sure our students were ready to meet the needs, to meet the challenges, I should say, and the expectations of that grade level. So that's something we plan to revisit. We know that that was a request.
Okay, questions on the curriculum documents? If anyone wants to dive in, it's a lot, I understand. So however you guys want to tackle it. Mrs. Kelly.
Just had a quick question. Is this part of that or no? Is this completely separate?
It's a separate document.
Okay, then I'll save.
You want to wait for the enrollment? Okay. Anyone want to tackle anything that they have for curriculum documents? Yep, Mrs. Guernsey.
I'll just start with one question. First of all, thank you for all this work. I mean, it's astounding to me that you were able to put together such comprehensive documents in this amount of time. Just mind blowing. So thank you for that. As you may know, I've asked a number of questions about the cultural responsiveness of the curriculum that we purchased. It was an enormous concern of mine. And you spoke to using the NYU scorecard, and I just was wondering if you could elaborate on that. I don't know, do you mean that you applied it to the specific text that you were purchasing? Because we know that the scorecard failed the package that we purchased. So what does that mean that you applied it?
So each grade level team took the scorecard and they analyzed each and every core text that they actually put in the document. They looked to see in terms of character diversity as well as author diversity, because that's what the scorecard does. And then they filled in any of the areas that were gaps. Then we further took a look and we looked at our families and our students, and we wanted to make sure that they were well represented as well. And then we reached out to Lee and Low, which is a very reputable publisher, and we included additional text strategically aligned in those modules as well to make sure that we were being responsive. And that's just part of it. What you're not going to see just yet are the culturally responsive practices, and that comes in the implementation guide. I give you this example all the time. Maybe not you, but I give everybody this example. At the very beginning, when you're building a community of readers and writers, you honor everyone's name. That's one of the practices that goes into our pre-K, our grade K, our grade 1 curriculum documents, and that you'll see in the implementation guide. We're also going to use Goldie Mohammed's framework for culturally responsive practices. She has a nice framework for us to consider. And so it's kind of like a two-pronged approach. One is about text, but the other are about practices. And so that's in the other part of the curriculum that we get to write.
Thank you. I'm just so pleased to hear about the work that's happened in that direction. Thank you.
Thank you.
I mean, I can go if you want me to go before you. I mean, or do you want to go? Yeah, okay. Give you a break for a second. Okay, so a few thoughts for me. I mean, there's a lot here. It's just for the public knows this is over 1,000 pages of documents. If you haven't seen, they are available online for everyone to review. A few questions for me and where to begin. I'm going to start with the technical components. There are some prerequisite issues and course titles that I've noticed in terms of being inconsistent. So for example, and this goes all the way through. So for English, all of you have English 11 as a prerequisite, but you don't have 11H as a possible prerequisite. Same with 12H, same with AP Ling and Lit, same with every single course. So in other words, for English 10 college prep, you have English 9 as a prerequisite, but you don't have English 9H. So as we vote on these documents, someone who took 9H would not be allowed to take 10.
Typo. Sorry about that.
So all the prerequisites.
We'll fix that.
Are off a little bit.
You got it. Thank you.
I figured that was an error, but
it's just an oversight.
Yeah, don't want to vote the wrong
Every
thing.
time we went back into these documents with a different lens to check something, human, right? Human error. So I appreciate that.
No,
Thank you.
That's fine. The other thing that I noticed for the acting items is that you have grade 9 to 12 for all of them available, but they, after one, have prerequisites, so I don't think it could be possible that they could be open to 9 to 12. So acting 1 is open to 9 to 12, but acting 2 is open to 9 to 12 as well, but you have to have had taken acting 1 to enroll in it, so it can't be open to grade 9.
We were just making sure you were paying attention.
Oh,
Thank you. Another typo. That's so,
so
thank you.
just I think the acting to performance studio 3 and 4, those grade levels possibly can't be right.
You got it.
Okay. I'm going to go to the reading lists for high school. I'm just going to try to say this diplomatically. Was there a thought when you were crafting the book lists in terms of college prep to honors differentials? You have language that say for college prep, you shall read 4 books from the list below. For honors, it'll say shall read at least 6 books and 4 of them must be from the challenging reading list. None, except for 10th, I believe, but not even in their language, says that the 9th grade college prep classes have to read anything from the challenging list. So I believe that must have been an intentional decision. And what I would like to know is, and help me understand of why you didn't make it be at least for the college prep kids to have to do at least one of the challenging lists. They're not required to do any. And the reason why I ask that question is this. Should you want them, there are really distinct differentials between that 9 and that 9H. Huge in terms of writing, analysis, metacognitive reflection, etc. If they don't get that kind of experience, even if it's later in the year, as some sort of a requirement, aren't they trapped outside of ever moving up the chain because they will have missed the window?
Jenny and Ross, do you want to speak to that? Just thinking about some of the decisions that were made when we were crafting those.
I can speak to some of this. I don't teach 9th grade, and I didn't work on the 9th grade curriculum documents. I don't think you did either. So we don't have any 9th grade teacher representatives here, and I don't want to speak for those individuals. I teach 10th grade and AP literature, so good for me. But I can speak to the decision not to require challenging texts at the college prep level. Part of that goes back to what, and I don't want to mispronounce your name, Ms. Maxim Kennelly, I'm sorry. Part of what you said in terms of leveling, right? We used to have 3 levels at the 9th, 10th, and 4 levels at the 11th grade. So we would have what used to be called like core, right? Which was for students who weren't yet functioning at grade level in reading and writing. We no longer have that level, so all of the students who are not functioning at grade level are absorbed into college preparatory classes. For those students, books at the challenging level are absolutely inaccessible. So I don't think it's true, however, that the 9th grade college prep class wouldn't have the one requirement of a challenging text. My understanding is that 9 and 10 both have as a required text, and again, I didn't work on that document, of 1 Shakespeare, right? So that at least 1 Shakespearean text needs to be taught in both 9th and 10th grade. Romeo and Juliet or A Midsummer Night's Dream or whatever they landed on as their Shakespearean options would then need to be taught at the college prep level, and it would be that, it would meet that requirement. Additionally, teachers nor students are limited to the books on these lists. So if you were teaching a class, and I have many times, that is functioning at a really high level and the students in it are ready, right, for challenging text, that option is still there. The lists are identical for college prep and honors, right? It's just what's required. So what that enables teachers to determine is how to respond both culturally and intellectually to the students in front of them. If you put a requirement that students can't meet, do you know what I mean? Then it becomes a little bit, it becomes unfair. Additionally, I've not, in my personal experience, I teach 10th grade, I teach both honors and college prep, and I've taught the college prep level at 10th grade, both in sort of like the standard configuration of the course and also as a collaboratively taught course with a special education co-teacher in the room. And so those courses have a high number of students who have like literacy needs. I've not in my experience seen students locked in or trapped at any level. They move very fluidly at my school across levels. I have a number of students in my honors class this year who were in 9th grade college prep last year. I have a number of students who were in 9th grade honors last year who decided college, the honors 10th grade, which is challenging, might not be for them because they have other priorities in their lives, which is understandable. So I'd have not, in my experience, seen students trapped, and that's the reason why we made those decisions. But my understanding is that 9th grade would have a Shakespearean requirement, and I'd just like to also point out that was my idea for an elective, and but one child signed. I told Miss.
No, I did see
I'm like, that, everyone's going to want that. Everyone wants Shakespeare. She was like, no, you're wrong. I'm like, no, I'm 100. They love Macbeth. I know they're going to want more. And no, I was wrong. But anyway, I do believe that Shakespeare is a requirement in both 9th and 10th grade. And and I do believe that would fall into the challenging category, but I was not involved in writing the 9th grade curriculum.
So Julie will go back to the 9th grade teachers and she'll talk with them. We'll gain some consistency over the next couple of days in terms of requirement or putting something in there. So this way we ensure students are not locked out. The goal is to have high expectations for all students, no matter what course they're taking, and at a minimal at grade level. So we definitely want to make sure that we'll articulate that. So thank you for bringing that up.
All right. So now we'll get to my middle school. As everyone knows, for a very long time, in this district is well known. It's not even anecdotal. It's just a sheer fact. Middle school does not prepare you for honors level, English and social studies, period. End of story. When I read your non-honors description, and then I go back to the 8th grade, can you tell me in the 8th grade course, analyze texts that are above grade level? Is that in the 8th grade curriculum?
I have to open up the document. I'm not sure. What grade level did you work on, Rita? Oh, 6th grade.
These could be follow-up, Janine. Okay, like you're going to get my point is. I'm pulling words out of the 9th grade honors class, and I'm saying, does that exist in 8th grade?
Mm-hmm.
So like in the 9th grade honors class, it says, the description, it will say analyze texts that are above grade level. Where do the 8th grade kids get that skill? Independent writing with attention and focus, right? 9th grade honors. Where is that in 8th grade? Depth of analysis on complex texts across genres. Is that in 8th grade? Using voice, expression, cognitive reflection, etc. 9th grade honors. Is that in 8th grade? So my point is, for our kids that we have all known, and maybe some of you are new, some of you have been here for a long time, we can't have anymore kids go from 8th grade ELA to 9th grade honors English and 9th grade global and not have what those 9th grade teachers expect on day one. So if we're not doing another 8th grade class, I'll ask Ms. Goss this question. Is the 8th grade ELA class vertically aligned to 9th grade honors English and global studies?
They're all vertically aligned in terms of the transfer skills, yes, and essential questions, yes. But remember, we did have the articulation, the vertical articulation, to make sure that teachers knew what dispositions, what skills, what knowledge students needed from 8th to 9th grade. So we're going to take a very close look then at the points that you just made to make sure they're clearly articulated in the document.
And this is not, I think I'm just frustrated because we've known this for a really long time in this district. And I can only speak for myself. I was pretty clear. Like I either need another level or it has to be aligned to the harder. So I understand. I just, I'm also kind of frustrated because between 6th and 9th grade for math, there are 12 courses. 12. But somehow we treat ELA like it's one size fits all. Different subjects, I get it. I'm having a hard time understanding why, or at least we didn't know sooner than today or when we got the documents. But that wasn't where you were headed. I think I just personally would have appreciated that. So those are just some of my concerns, a little bit technical. Some of the requirements for the college prep kids. When we see this data, right, that we just went over, and who's enrolling in classes, who's not, how they're performing. And I see this at the same night, and it says, well, those kids don't even have to read one of the hard ones. Do you understand why I'm concerned? I think we should have some of these skills that are in this class. I think we should expect, of course, I know there's always exceptions, right? All kids should have these things. Just my 2 cents. Thank you. Anyone else? Oh, sorry, Mrs. Guernsey.
I'd like to piggyback on that because I know I had shared with you before my interest in seeing that alignment from 8th grade ELA to 9th grade English honors and my concerns around that. So I was also surprised not to see that in these documents that we received. And, you spoke to that introduction and Janine, Mrs. Goss had mentioned that we wouldn't be looking at it now. So can you give me a sense for where that fits on the timeline? Like when would, if you mean that we're looking at adding another level for 8th grade, I don't know what that means. And then what's the timeline? I don't understand that.
No, that was just going to be something that we revisited. We didn't have a specific timeline. We have to revisit that. That was not something that we could have done at this point in time. A lot of research needed to go into that. And so pulling this off since May 30th and getting over 1,000 pages of curriculum documents aligned in the way that they are was a really, really huge lift. So that has to be studied. That's something that we really have to spend a lot of time doing. It was not something that we were able to do at this point in time.
I just have a question, I think, of the chair, because I'm a little confused as I'm listening because I hear about access to high-level courses and who can get into them, but I'm also hearing about creating levels at the middle school, which will further then create the gap earlier, which will not allow access to high-level courses. And then I hear that in the 9th grade honors class, they should be able to do all those things the day they walk in, but then why are they taking the course if they're not going to learn those things in the course? So I'm kind of, I just want to make sure, because as we sit around the table and we go back, it's not clear to me as sitting here as to what direction.
I can help clarify for you. And the clarification is 8th grade's not aligned to honors. Period.
But 8th grade's not aligned to honors.
It's not. I know you've not been here for a long time, but the reality is that we all know, parents all know that this is the issue, that between 8th and 9th, you go into 9th grade honors global or 9th grade honors English, they're not leaving 8th grade with what they need to be successful day one. All that gap between 8th, I don't know how you fill that gap without, and I'm not saying we have to have a different course. What I'm saying is there has to be enough skill within the rigor and complexity and analysis and writing, especially. Writing analysis is huge.
There were at least 8 areas that they identified from 8th to 9th in order to make sure students were, And I mentioned just a couple of them: note-taking, text annotation were some of them, and study skills were as well. So there are several more. That's something that we have to embed in the implementation guide, because that is what they identified as making sure students were going to be ready to meet the challenges of a 9 honors course. But we'll share that with you. We'll be prepared to do that at the next meeting. I can even send it to you prior. But that was our answer as of right now in terms of making sure, because they knew that was a concern. And it's not just 8 to 9 that was a concern, it's 5 to 6. We also looked at pre-K to K, each grade. And we sort of came up with these literacy promises, as I articulated earlier, the core instructional practices that we have to make sure every teacher is able to implement. So that students, it's not, I'll also describe it sometimes like Groundhog Day. When you think of that movie, it shouldn't be like that. Students going from grade to grade should be learning some core instructional practices, so this way they become independent with them. And so when they enter a new classroom, the expectation is not completely different. So it just gets enhanced. And so that's exactly what we worked on this summer.
Just my last point, now that I thought of it, is for the 9th grade college prep. By not making one of them at least required, here's also my concern. Someone may take on the Odyssey, right, for their class. And those kids will get that challenging. But the other ones will say, I'm going to stick with Fault in Our Stars.
Can I talk just for a minute about text complexity? I can't, again, speak to the 9th grade, which seems to be your bigger concern. But for the 10th grade list of books that are at grade level, a number of those texts are appropriate for college level experiences. So Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe, The Glass Menagerie by Tennessee Williams, these are listed as grade level texts, and you could, again, study them in college. Any one of those books, studied well, any one of them will prepare you not only for 11th grade honors, which a lot of my 10th grade students who are in college prep go on to take, but in some cases AP classes as well. And I also just want to shout out to the Tomlinson 8th grade teachers who prepared both of my sons really well for honors 9th grade.
So can I just follow up with your point then? Then why do we have a list that matches for the 2 courses that are divided into subgroup categories then?
Because some of the texts are not readily accessible at grade level. The Age of Innocence by Edith Wharton is not readily accessible even for a student who's reading slightly above grade level. That book is an incredibly challenging, really complex period piece written in the early 1900s about the 1870s in American history. Like, there's no way for a student to access that book if they're, but The Glass Menagerie, it's much shorter. The vocabulary isn't as difficult. The context is clearer. It's a play, it's a drama. So there are pieces that you can act out. The text differentiation between between the challenging books and the ones that are at grade level, those decisions were made by groups of teachers who have experience teaching these books and who have taught hundreds, if not, sadly in my case at this point, thousands of students, and know how easily they access various of the texts. So I just do want to say that I have, and I believe all of my colleagues have, incredibly high expectations for all of the students in our classes, regardless of their level and regardless of what they come to us with. I think the text lists are robust and challenging, even at the grade level. I really do. And I'm proud of the work people did to create them.
Mrs. Mixon-Kelly, did you want to go?
Yeah, and I don't know if this is the right time to introduce this, but my list of questions right now is at 2 pages single-spaced, which I already spoke with Dr. Zavajancic about wanting to meet and talk. But I will just put out there, there is absolutely no way I could ask staff to respond to everything that I have questions about and be prepared to vote on this on November 20th. I think this, first of all, I respect the work that has been done enormously. Again, just as a reminder, we used to do these in 2 chunks. We used to do the pre-K through 6 or pre-K through 5 and then 6 through 12. And this idea of truly holding staff accountable for the vertical alignment to do the whole thing. Again, I was astounded knowing the start date, that at the end of May and what you pulled off by now. I want to be really clear that I so respect the work that has been done. But the questions I have are I want to get this right. I want staff to get this right. And I also, Ms. Goss's point about every time you look at it, you pick up something new or whatever, and we are a fresh set of eyes. And there is a lot in here that I have questions about, some of which I'm outright not happy about. I think there are missed opportunities. I think the world mythology unit in 7th grade really bothers me, because that is a missed opportunity. When you talk about that idea of knowledge matters and all that emphasis of getting that content strain that we have K through 5, and I think it starts to fall off in middle school and the bottom drops out in high school, at least in terms of the specificity that we can see. And that world mythology unit is a perfect example for me of something our students really need. But again, I just need to put out there that I will not be ready to vote on this November 20th. And so
for your questions, you're going to do that.
Right. So, and I'll throw a few of them out there as an example. I'm curious why there's not one novel in elementary school. That was a question. There's not one novel in 6th grade. There is no Shakespeare requirement in grade 9, which I agree with you. I went in looking for that expectation. It's not there. There is one required text in all of high school. And I just know as a teacher how often I'm looking to build on the work of my peers. And when no one has read the same books, how much more challenging that becomes. And yes, and thank goodness we do have it in the middle school. I do appreciate Ned. I do appreciate The Outsiders. And what was the third one? The Giver. That's something. But in all of high school, it is only Macbeth which is required. And I have to believe there's something in there that should go beyond just what's a teacher's favorite. And again, a tough conversation. You put 5 English teachers in the room and you're going to get 6 different opinions. I know the world. But that's where something is in there that can be a common expectation of all of our students. And we have only one. I'll pause. I'm not trying to talk over anybody. If anyone has a response, or if you would just prefer to let me go, you can do that too. I was concerned about the grammar instruction. No surprise. I could find nothing in K through 5 aside from one reference, which I quoted, which was for in one module that there was an expectation of complete sentences, capitalization, punctuation, and spelling. And that's it. And Common Core clearly has it. So I don't know if I missed it.
But we articulated that in every single module. That is actually one of the targets that we are weak in. We've talked about that. That is articulated in every single module in terms of content and skills for grammar. Every single module. It's under language.
So then I looked in the wrong place, because what most often was said was proofreading for errors. So then that's on me. So that's me looking.
That's okay.
But again,
it's in there.
We're talking about 1,000 pages.
Yeah.
This packet came at a really, and this is just me personally, it came at a really tough time for me. And so I'm essentially getting a presentation now and being asked to vote in 6 days. I can't do it. I care too much about your work, and I care too much about this work to do that. And good to know that I was wrong about that. Just trying to look at, again, single spaced here.
While you're looking, can I get a motion to extend the meeting? You guys, we have another curriculum to get through and some textbooks. So can I get a motion to extend? Yes. 12? Second, Mrs. Maxon Kennelly, all in favor? Mrs. Maxon Kennelly, Mr. Asa, Mrs. Jacobson, Mrs. Guernsey, opposed? Mrs. Vitale, Mrs. Vitale, Mrs. Chrissy, Mrs. Chrissy, Mrs. Chrissy, Mrs. Kelly, Mr. Peterson, motion fails. Do you want to make another one? Or am I going to take this over to the 20th for curriculum? That agenda's getting longer. Second, Mrs. Maxon Kennelly, all in favor? Mrs. Vitale, Mrs. Guernsey, Mrs. Jacobson, Mr. Asa, Mrs. Maxon Kennelly, and Mrs. Kelly. Opposed. Mr. Peterson. Motion passes 7-1. Oh, sorry, Mr. Vitale opposed. Motion passes 6-2.
If you wouldn't mind, I'm going to excuse the teachers here that have to get up very early tomorrow. So we want to thank them. Thank you for your participation very, very much. Don't feel bad at all about going. Go to sleep. Thank you.
So Jen, do you want to follow up with everyone after that and then so we can move on to the technology?
Absolutely.
Unless anybody else had anything else. Mrs. Guernsey.
I just had a quick question about the electives courses, which I'm super excited about, but I'm just wondering, there were a couple electives that currently exist that I don't know what the criteria is applied to this, but they don't meet like standards for sports in college or something. And so what I'm wondering, and I don't know if that also implies that they aren't received the same way by colleges. So I'm wondering, these new courses, do we anticipate that they would meet this highest level of criteria?
So I've put sports literature in place in a number of schools, and it has always gotten NCAA approval. I'm not sure about the true crimes course, but we just need to move it forward. We need to submit it. And typically, if you put literature in the title, they approve it. But we just haven't done that yet because the courses haven't been approved yet.
Thanks so much.
We'll move on to the technology piece. Mrs. Kelly, did you have a question on the enrollment thing? No? Okay, sure? Okay. No,
I thought my time was up.
I'm never going to cut you off, but if you want to, if we're going to do it, I'm going to have to carry forward these other items. Then if we don't.
I think it'll be more productive if I just meet with them.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. We
Thank
do
you.
truly
It's a huge
appreciate
amount of
your
work.
feedback. Thank you. It's okay.
Big lift.
We do want to get it right. We all want to get it right.
Absolutely.
We're all on the same team.
Absolutely.
We do appreciate your feedback and we'll make it right.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right. First reading of technology education curriculum.
Good evening again, James Avachansik, Chief Academic Officer, and I'm here with Chris McLeese, who's our Technology Education Curriculum Liaison. He will also introduce our high school teacher here who's joining the presentation. I will forego my comments. Chris is going to get to all of them in this presentation at some point for saving time, and then we'll be able to answer questions at the end. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, James. As James said, I'm the liaison for the department. We're 16 staff. We have 10 at the high school, 5 at each high school, and then 2 at each middle school. In addition, I'm a teacher at Roger Ludlow Middle School. I do manufacturing and then the 7th grade general tech ed, which you'll see in a few minutes. And this is Chris Kearney, who teaches the wood manufacturing at Fairfield Ludlow High School. It's been, I believe, 11 years since our curriculum has been updated. And the last time we wrote it was before my time here. I've been in Fairfield for 8 years now. It was based on the 2012 state standards, and they updated 2014, but they're in the process now of updating. Unfortunately, like they're 6 months behind our process that we're going through right now, presenting to you now. But STEM has exploded. This is from the Connecticut Department of Labor. They're predicting explosive growth up through 2030, and our kids will be feeding into that part of the economy. It's hard to read on this slide, but you see everything I highlighted: software engineers, computer user support specialists, architectural engineer managers, and so on are a few of the top 10 areas. And our middle school and high school courses feed into this sort of these sort of specialty areas. And the state actually has just recently, about a week or two ago, started this new initiative, Connecticut Make It Here. They're supporting, as it says there, we are a state of creators, makers, innovators, and entrepreneurs. And this is what we're trying to instill in the kids who come through the tech ed program. I have a student now, former student from middle school, graduated from Ludlow High School, actually two. One is studying engineering at Notre Dame, and the other one is studying interior design and architecture at Northeastern. My own son went through the system and is now an electrical engineer coming out of WPI. It's also been in the news lately. I'm sorry, I went a little too fast. That was a New York Times article about the importance of shop and kids getting a chance to work with their hands and not sitting in front of a computer terminal all day. And what that does, the synapses that opens when you're working with your hands and you really have to think on your feet and you collaborate with people around you and the people teaching your classes. So tech ed is about tools, technology, and technique. It all comes together. Even at the middle school level, I am constantly talking about design, the world around you, the things these kids have. They don't understand what goes into making the Nikes they like, or the other fashion they wear. They're always about fashion, and their electronics that they use. So we do this through various projects. It's a project-based curriculum, really, for the most part, where kids either design their own need or they explore the world around them and come up with a need, and we figure out, okay, what can we do to solve a problem? So I'm going to break it down into the two. The middle school is the smaller, obviously, of the two curriculum. So we've got our 8th grade classes are elective. 7th grade is required of all, tech ed in 7th grade is required. And so from my personal set of students, I see about 320 kids a year. This is something that I think a lot of people don't understand. The Unified Arts teachers see a big chunk of the kids through all 3 years in middle school. I think it's slightly smaller at the other two because our OMS has a slightly larger population. So we currently offer manufacturing and construction, trans-tech, and communication technology. But we found that the trans-tech and communication don't really provide a clear vertical alignment to high school. And that's another sort of aspect of our curriculum. We try to get the kids prepared to go on to high school tech ed courses. So So the changes were minimal at the middle school level. Tech ed and manufacturing don't change. Transportation is changing to engineering technology. We're still doing some units on transportation, but it's really more about opening up into engineering. You'll see when I talk about the high school courses that we have computer engineering, we have engineering 1 and 2, and we weren't really feeding the kids into that clearly. And the graphic communication, we tagged on the graphic part, and we're going to be doing more graphic projects because we have the graphic design technology as a course offering at the high school level. And then this new course, there was an animation on this, but I guess I lost it, thank you, is the robotics and coding programming. We've had various discussions with Justine Lasala. She came to us over the summer when we were pretty much in the thick of this. We discussed how we're going to, I know she was working on having a computer science or coding alignment like through the elementary school. And then there was really nothing. There was one 8th grade coding class in the LMC as an elective, but nothing in tech ed. And when they get to the high school, they have plenty of opportunity at the high school. So we're introducing this robotics programming. We already have the VEX robot kits. It comes with free software and lesson planning. So there's really no cost at this point for this new program. And it opens up the more opportunity for the students to get an extra elective to choose from. So high school, as I said, the middle school was not that complex. At the high school, these are the existing classes. Computer engineering 1 through 5. Now, I'm just going to read off a couple of these because you could see this was a major focus for us. This is boring. Computer engineering 1, computer engineering 2. That's what the students would see when they looked at the program of studies. So we actually focused a lot on coming up with new names for the courses that would really explain what the courses do and make them more appealing. With that, we've also reorganized some of the labs to make them a little more effective and efficient. If you haven't seen them, please give me drop me an email. We'd love to give you tours. We have state-of-the-art equipment. You'll see a few photos later on in the graphic design studios, in the wood labs, in the auto labs, and the computer labs are being updated. I believe both Ludlow and Ward this summer. I know Ludlow is for sure. I can't remember now if Ward is. They're also in old buildings, and the buildings need some maintenance that would specifically, so that's why I have that line there about maintenance being required. Like we've put in a budget request as part of the building budget to update electrical in the Woods lab at Ludlow. We got new lifts already this year for Ward, auto lifts, and they're budgeted to go in next year at Ludlow. We've got some wonderful new equipment by the Perkins grants because we're part of the CTE, the Career Technical Education Cluster, along with Family Consumer Science and Business. So in the past 2 or 3 years, we've got a new embroidery machine. These may not say much to you if you aren't familiar with what we do, but these are $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 pieces of equipment that we've been able to acquire. So again, we've updated all the courses for the clarity of the name and content to make it clear to the students looking to see what they need to sign up for and how they align and how they grow step to step. And the middle schools originally were written on the 2012 state high school standards. And they were somehow adapted to make them be middle school courses. I wasn't here then. I don't know what the logic was, but I think nothing existed, so they went to the high school. And so, again, the state is in the process of writing the curriculum now, so we didn't have anything still from the state to work from. So we, in turn, turned toward the ITEEA, International Technology Education Association, Engineering Educators Association, for their standards. They have STEL, Science, Technology, Engineering, Literacy standards that we found were very useful for the middle school. So we set those, we based the middle school curriculum on that, but they were too general for high school. We needed something a little more specific. So we stayed with the existing state standards. We cleaned up all of our curriculum, and I believe I touched on this. So, for example, here's one right here. Computer Engineering 3 becomes Computer Engineering 3, Computer Repairs, Computer Controlled Circuits. Right away, the kid who's taken 1 and 2 knows what this is all about. I actually got feedback from one of my fellow teachers who's got students at Ludlow High School just the other day in the hallway. She said, "Oh, I saw your curriculum was posted already," and I didn't realize it had been. And she's, I guess being a parent, she got it through the new parent email. And she said, you know, it's really interesting. Like one of our our home and autos class is now called Happy Home, Happy Car. And it's about basic home maintenance. What can you do around the house if you need to replace an outlet, if you need to replace a light fixture? How do you check the oil in your car? Things like that. She said, that makes me want to look at that class and get one of my kids to take this class, which is our goal. So here you are. Here's what to do. So basically the stuff on the left is what's already existing and everything on the right. Like, so computer engineering. This is more about, we actually had quite a bit of discussion about, isn't this really computer science? It's not. It doesn't involve, there's some coding involved, but it's not teaching kids how to code at this level, in this particular class. It's about like the guts. How do you solder connections? How do the connections work? How do you hook up to a power bank? What does that mean? So in the second level, that gets much more advanced. I hesitate to say intense, but they start to work with things like Raspberry Pi and Arduinos, which are small, compact computers that you can use to do things like run turn the lights on in a room, or turn your radio on, or it starts the juices flowing, no pun intended, or pun intended, juices flowing about how you can use a small computer to control something. And this is actually what my son is doing. He's, as I said, he's an electrical engineer he went to Ward and then WPI, and he's working on embedded systems, it's called at his level. So then that builds, leads on to computer repairs, because we have these things, how do you fix them? And then onto networking and troubleshooting. How do you set up a network, a home network, an office network? How do you do it commercially? And the thing that's been really hot that the kids have been asking for like crazy is cybersecurity and hacker defense. We touched on it in these classes before, but never to any great extent, and now we're focusing on it. Computer-aided drafting. So this starts out, the first one, introduction, is where they learn generally about CAD. So even there, before it was just CAD, and if you read this in the program of studies, if you didn't know what CAD stood for, you'd have no idea what it is about. So we've put that in the name. And they touch on all those areas, but it's really about learning how CAD works anywhere. Then they pick one of those. They realize after doing architecture, engineering, and 3D animation, they really love 3D animation, or they love game design. So that's when the next step starts with beginner. You start to focus on one of those three paths. And then intermediate builds on beginner. And then advanced, by the time they get to the end, they are pretty much self-directed. Of course, the teacher's in there guiding them through things, but they've now advanced through multiple different kinds of software. And they're doing their own capstone project. And I have a couple of short video clips at the end to show you. Graphic design, similar kind of thing. We've focused on a couple of these courses at the 5th level to have the kids be acting like professionals, running their own shop, running their own lab, building. In this case, they're doing graphic projects. They actually, they start out learning the basics of graphic design. They use a couple of small machines in the level 2. By the time they get to 3, they're using just about everything in the lab. And then by the time you get to 4, they're doing actual production work for the schools. Like they just recently did T-shirts for the Norma Freem cancer, I think it was a road race. But they do things like that for the football teams, the different sports. Sometimes a teacher or a theater production needs hats done or whatever. They'll do this stuff. Transtech. They start out, as you can see, with small engines. This is literally kids in a garage taking apart like lawnmower engines, snow blowers, leaf blowers, and we have a collection of small engines that we've actually purchased over the years that they strip down, rebuild, and they learn the basic skills on, even just in a very general way, how these things fit together. And then they start getting into maintenance at the second Tech 2, Trans Tech 2. By the time they're at level 3, it's a little more advanced maintenance, where you might have been doing oil changes, maybe changing a filter in level 2, level 3. You're probably, are they starting to get into brake systems? They're getting into lubrication systems and brake systems and so on. And then by 4, they actually are working on people's cars. Like I had a problem with my car the other day, and I was talking to Danny Books over there, who teaches at Ludlow High School. So bring it in. My kids would love that. We haven't had something like that. So yeah, I left my truck in the bay for the day, and they rotated the tires, looked under the hood, did all that stuff. And by the time you get to 5, again, you're learning the skills to be a tech prep, and you could work in an auto body shop, work in a car shop, or repair shop, excuse me, not auto body shop. And then wood manufacturing. Should I just run with it, or do you want to jump?
You're doing a great job.
Okay. Again, 1 through 5. We've got fantastic wood shops. We start out with they used to sort of teach a little bit of everything every year to everybody, and then we realized we got to focus and have a path like the rest of the courses are. So very basic skills at the beginning. We do some of that at the middle school too. Like our kids in the middle school are using, like in my room, they use band saws, scroll saws, drill presses, chop saws. In 7th grade. Then when they get to 8th grade, they can I have a planer and a jointer that I let them use. The only thing they don't use is a table saw. When they get to high school, they're using table saws. And then it gets specified into different kind of cabinet techniques. Turning the tables, they're using lathes, and they're actually turning table legs, baseball bats, spindles for different pieces of furniture. And then the last 2, just like with the other courses, they start to learn skills like how could I run a cabinet shop or work in a cabinet shop. The 5th level, we're actually introducing CNC production machines and skill sets, which means you design something on a computer, you draw it up, you take the file, upload it to this machine, and this router will actually cut the pieces you need out of 1 sheet of plywood, and you take it off the table when it's done, and you can put together a cabinet or whatever it is that you're designing. So I think I actually covered a lot of this. I'm not sure I need to get into too much detail here. Yeah, right? But let me just jump, if you don't mind, to the implementation part. 2 questions first? Okay. Any questions at this point?
Just really quickly, so whenever there's 5 levels, does that mean that 1 and 2 are half credit courses, I assume?
Yeah, I think pretty much for the most part. That's correct, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mrs. Guernsey, go ahead.
Hi, I have a question. Thank you for this presentation. I just have a question about the titles. I think they're extremely helpful, but maybe this is a question for Dr. Zavijanczak. I'm not sure. What would be the title that would appear on the transcript? Because they're very long. I mean, I think they're helpful, but I'm just trying to see how it would be implemented logistically for the transcript purpose.
I don't know how many characters off the top of my head right now. We generally have a title in the program of studies and then an abbreviated one that goes in Infinite Campus followed by the transcript, but I forget how many total characters they have.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Mrs. Kelly?
This is more of a comment than a question, and I'm not sure who to address it to, but since I will not be here when this comes up, or I don't know when we're voting on it, but just in general, I know we focused a lot on the high school, but I've been silently advocating for more access to this kind of stuff at the middle school level. So while I appreciate the changes in names and, tweaking a little bit of the curriculum, I personally would like to see more time dedicated to these. And I know, unfortunately, that in my mind, my naive mind, that probably does come at the expense of the arts. I hate to say it. I think in my opinion, I think there's a disproportionate amount of emphasis on band and chorus 3 times a week. And I'm not saying it goes away. I'm not saying we take it away. There still needs to be that exposure, and I get that. But we force it on these kids in middle school 3 times a week, whatever. And then once they get to high school, they don't have to do anything. And I just feel like there's a need for this at the middle school level. I would love to see more time dedicated to it. I know there's a finite amount of minutes, so that has to come at the expense of something else, but that's something I would really love to see in our middle school, more emphasis on these kind of programs. Just a comment.
Mrs. Maxon-Kennelly.
Just one more question. It makes reference to initial bridge from K through 5 coding. I wasn't aware we were doing that. Like, when did that happen?
Within the STEAM program, our units built into that. So that is the bridge getting from there to the high school.
So that's within the science curriculum documents that we voted on that?
So I wasn't here for the implementation of STEAM, but the year that STEAM was created, that curriculum houses the coding. So that is a special in the elementary schools, similar to PE and art, for example, that is teaching those skills. So not in science, social studies, but by the STEAM teacher who is a separate.
Like the whole code.org thing, remember?
Oh.
Oh,
okay. I mean, I'm happy about it. I just didn't.
Anyone else? No? Okay. Do you just want to jump into the textbooks?
So.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead, Ms. Risa.
I just want to say thank you for that presentation. And a lot of these courses that you went over were some of my favorite courses in high school, like CAD, automotive, woodworking, those classes. And those are some of the ones I remember the most. Don't say anything, Mrs. Maxon-Kennelly. But I'm psyched to see this robust offering and growth. So thank you.
I'm just wondering where maybe some of us might want to be interested in night school because I'm just wondering, happy home, happy auto just sounds like something I should probably partake in.
Can we, I would like to take you up on the tour offer. So through Mr. Testani, maybe we can set that up.
That'd be fantastic.
I would love to see this
Anytime.
in action.
As a teacher, I've taught at several different high schools, and we have had programs where we were able to teach adults in the evening. I've mentioned it to some of my colleagues here. I'd be more than happy and willing to do it, and I'm not sure whether it's a possibility within the districts. There was some discussion about liability and that type of thing, but as a teacher, I'd love to do it. I find it as equally rewarding to do it with adults as I do with kids. And I really hope that
We just have so much cool stuff going on in our high schools. It's that whether it be the pottery thing or these items, I wonder what we could be doing at the nighttime. But thank you so much. It was an awesome presentation. Did you want to speak to the textbooks?
So all I have to say about the textbooks is there are two for our transportation technology courses. These are textbooks that have been long-standing within the courses, and the documents are in front of you in compliance with the policy that was recently passed on textbooks.
Mrs. Maxon-Kennelly.
Just one other question. Usually with a curriculum review, there's whatever's the financial note going to be for voting on that. It can, if it's a handout, I didn't see it, but.
So a lot of the tech ed stuff gets built into the Perkins grant. There is the textbook cost if we were to need new copies. Right now, it's currently being used through 2025. So it'll come up in a few years. But as of next year with implementation, we don't plan on any additional funds beyond curriculum hours that you'll see in the budget, curriculum implementation hours.
So in terms of, because there's outright a new course for middle school, and I assume some curriculum revision, so won't that involve some summer PD amount?
Yeah, it will. We already have the robots. We actually acquired them a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, I forget. I built some time into my budget for the curriculum last year for this year and this year for next year already. Plus, VEX offers a really robust curriculum and lesson planning that we're hoping to use and build our curriculum on top of. So.
Thank you for the presentation. It's exciting to see these classes. Do you have a showcase for the woodworking for your students? I remember like a past presentation. Is that still happening?
I know that they do it at Ward. I'm new to Ludlow. This is year 1.8. I was at Tomlinson before this, and I moved partway through last year. And it's something I'm looking towards doing. I'm trying to build up the skills of our woodworkers in order to sort of have a robust show for the community. But certainly that is something we're doing also as a way to get more students interested in the program within the school as well as the community. So.
Well, if it's planned for later in the year or next year, just please share it with the board so we can participate. Thank you so much for this.
Ward did theirs in June. I was on a Saturday. I believe we sent it out. You may have missed that one.
No, I think that I remember seeing it in a past presentation. I just don't remember timing wise.
June. It was quite impressive.
Again, oh, sorry. Point of personal pride. My son made that as a senior at Ward, though. That's a grandfather clock. That's the kind of work our kids kick out. Just saying.
Okay, adopt.
Little gifts for us. They could have, they're little.
I think we talked about selling some of this to like fund some of the projects there in past conversations.
They
do amazing work.
They did sell at the showcase on the Saturday. They were selling all kinds of.
I need a new bookcase. I'm just saying.
I'm really sorry, Miss.
Can we put orders in? Okay. Adoption of policy 6146, requirements for graduation. Recommended motion that the Board of Education adopt policy 6146, requirements for graduation. Can I get a motion, please? Mrs. Maxon Kennelly, seconded by Mr. Peterson. Mrs. Maxon Kennelly, anything?
Just this was a mistake that got past the policy committee, got past the full board. A teacher observed it, brought it to the attention of Dr. Zavajanzik. So that's why this isn't even going in for a first read. This is a embarrassing error on the topic of STEAM.
Any discussion or questions before we go? Public comment? No? Back to the board. All in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. First reading of policy 6163.33, therapy dogs.
I'm not even going to talk more about this. Just please read at your leisure. Actually, if I could have questions in advance, if there are any, just so that I can prepare, or if I need staff, or most importantly, if I need to involve Mr. Mancusi, I would like to give him prior warning for that, but enjoy reading.
Approval of minutes that the Board of Education approve the 10/24/2023 BOE regular meetings. Can I get a motion, please? Mr. Asa, seconded by Mrs. Vitale. Any discussion, questions? Nope. Okay, take that back to the board. All in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, superintendent's report. Anything, Mr. Sistani?
Just very briefly, just want to acknowledge happy Diwali it was celebrated on Sunday, November 12th. Wishing those who celebrated joy and prosperity. As everyone may or may not be aware, November is Native American Heritage Month. We pay tribute to those traditions, languages, stories of Native American, Alaska Native, Native Hawaiian, and affiliated island communities to ensure their rich histories and contributions continue to thrive with each passing generation. Do want to acknowledge all the students and staff who celebrated our veterans last week. Every school seemed to have done something different, a ceremony, song, stories. Do want to acknowledge the Ludlow Music Department who presented a wonderful salute to veterans concert, and we want to thank all our veterans for keeping us safe and many sacrifices they have made. Congratulations to Timothy Dwight School and Holland Hill for being deemed schools of distinction in the latest Connecticut Accountability Report. Dwight earned the distinction for high performance, and Holland Hill earned for a distinction for high growth in math for all students and high need students. Our Fairfield Public School English Language Learner Department attended the 52nd Annual Con TESOL Conference at Sacred Heart to gain insight and connect with peers and field experts. Julie Heller, our Fairfield Public School Program Director for ELA 612, facilitated a session for educators on how to employ strategies that will support classroom teachers to best meet the needs of their diverse learners. The School Meal Advisory Committee, all the parents and students, we want to thank them and staff who volunteered on the 8th to be part of the School Meals Advisory Committee. They had their first meeting on the 8th. Attendees shared extremely valuable insights regarding menus, food waste, health and nutrition, operational considerations, and more. The next meeting will be held in February. And just to acknowledge a few of our wonderful students, first the Fairfield Ludlow Drama Club, who again you were made aware from Agatha, put on their presentation on November 3rd and 4th of Romeo and Juliet. If you missed it, they'll be doing Singing in the Rain in the spring, from what I understand. So should be another great performance. Just want to congratulate Charles Jones and Donnell Young from Fairfield Ludlow for being named All FCAC Boys Soccer. Parker Broderick, All FCAC Cross Country Boys from Ward. Sophie Spellman from Ward and Claire Fuchs from Ludlow for All FCAC Cross Country Girls. John Casella from Ward, All FCAC Boys Golf. And that's it.
Thank you. Committee liaison reports. Mrs. Vitale?
SEPTA is going to have their meeting this month, Wednesday, November 29th at McKinley at 7:30. Dan Von Horn, the chair of the Fairfield Commission on Disabilities, is going to be there to discuss the Fairfield Special Needs Survey. So it's a great opportunity for our parents to come out and discuss their needs with the chair of the commission in town and see, what we can bring to the table and how we can work together. So come join us.
Mr. Peterson, go ahead.
As you mentioned earlier, our presentation for the quarterly for the Board of Finance coming up on 21st. So next week, they're also having a special meeting on Thursday night to go over the purchasing policy, which they had a brief discussion about on the 1st and realized was a much too large of thing to tackle in the time they had. So they're having an entire meeting dedicated to it. And Special Projects Standing Billing Committee was canceled last time.
Anyone else? Okay. Open board comment. Public comment. Motion to adjourn. Mr. Asa, the Board of Regulation adjourned. Mrs. Kelly, all in favor. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, guys, before 11:30 even.